Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини, та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1100 of the nightly war news stream. And today we have very big news that U.S. officials have made a complete 180, and now they're supporting Ukraine, it seems like, based on current statements. And also, North Korea's deployed even more forces to Russia to fight the Ukrainians, and China has launched even more military exercises near Taiwan. We have big news to cover today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear significant news from inside the United States of America that the office of the President of the United States has now made an official reversal to prior statements made against the state of Ukraine and against their position on the war in Ukraine, as we are hearing that as of today, the President of the United States has declared that Zelensky is the best president that has ever existed in the state of Ukraine's entire national history. And not only that, we have also been able to hear that sanctions against the Russian Federation have been extended by order of the President of the United States for an additional year against the Russian Federation. A major and significant development showing that the United States war planning is now extending well on into the next 365 days. We have also been able to hear at the exact same time that the Russian Federation is dealing with incredibly troubling situations on the front lines, as we were able to hear that Ukrainian forces have continued to push back the Russian Federation's armed forces within the Toretsk region and within Pokrovsk. We have seen the Ukrainian armed forces have also continued to inflict incredibly high casualties on Russian armed forces throughout most of the front lines, and not only that, we've been able to see that some sort of an ammunition depot has been detonated within the town of Kursk inside the Kursk Oblast, only a few short miles away from the Kursk nuclear power plant. Not only that, we have also been able to hear that Belarus, Lukashenko, the leader of the Republic of Belarus, the dictator of Belarus for the past 30 years, has actually stated today that he believes that any negotiations involving the end to the war in Ukraine should involve the state of Ukraine. Now going against Putin's claims that it should not, because Ukraine has an illegitimate government. We have also been able to hear that the Republic of France is now possibly looking into getting involved in some form of a rare minimal agreement with Ukraine as well, although there is no reliance on that agreement to be able to continue the provisions of military support from the Republic of France to Ukraine. We have also been able to hear within the area of the Western Pacific, near to the coast of Taiwan, that the Chinese have moved forward even a larger number of vessels within the median line area of the Strait of Taiwan, and we've also been able to hear some very strongly worded statements today from Chinese Ministry of Defense officials, largely making it seem as though the Chinese have larger ambitions directed towards the Republic of China on the island of Taiwan, and that they're still, once again, beginning their fiery rhetoric that they will be forcing some sort of a reunification in between the Communist Chinese and the Democratic Chinese on the island of Taiwan. But nevertheless, today's news is absolutely massive in every single way. It's been a crazy bit of news today, and not only that, it's been even crazier to see that the United States has done a complete 180 on its foreign policy. And moving right on into that, which is probably the biggest piece of news that we have for the day, we were able to hear within the office of the President of the United States some very shocking statements that came out today that is something that I don't even really know how to take, because it's quite honestly a complete 180-degree turn from the statements that were being made prior. To start all off with the first one, or more so in action, because many people do know that actions speak louder than words, we were able to hear that the President of the United States has now extended sanctions against the Russian Federation for another year because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, meaning that official state actions of the United States of America are now confirming that the Russian Federation did invade Ukraine, something that actually was thrown up and contested a little bit while ago by statements from the President of the United States. And not only that, the incredibly difficult and crippling sanctions that the Russian Federation already has had levied against it will be continuing on into the future, which is something that we were not expecting, as it actually appeared, at least previously, that the President of the United States was actually saying that Russia should be brought back into the G7, and not only that, that formalized U.S. economic relations should begin with the Russian Federation, effective immediately. Now all of those statements are pretty much to naught, because we are now seeing that the President of the United States has, as a matter of fact, done the complete opposite on paper itself by extending the sanctions against the Russian Federation for the next 365 days, meaning that these sanctions will now elapse somewhere towards February 27th of 2026, and not just in the coming few days from today. Moving on into...
You know something had to have happened in the background, because this is like a reversal. Like yesterday, we saw the start of the reversal when we started hearing statements which indicated that, once again, Zelensky was not a dictator, in the words of the president. And now he set up the meeting, which will take place tomorrow, I believe early in the morning, between the U.S. president and Zelensky at the White House. Something has happened in the background. It seems to coincide with that meeting from Macron, like we were saying last night, but I wonder what it is, because once again, now we're hearing the Russians make statements which are kind of jaded toward the United States, and it seems like they backed out of the ceasefire talks, and they could back out of other talks as well. So something that we're not aware of has happened in the background, because this is like another day of whiplash, basically.
It really does seem like another day of whiplash. It's a very significant form of whiplash, one of the greatest that we've ever seen. People are going, wow, that's a lot of whiplash. That's a great deal of whiplash, chronic back pain. But we were also able to hear that, according to the President of the United States today, another statement that was made that it probably is blowing the minds of people like Tucker Carlson, because now the President of the United States said, in direct quote, "We want to work with Zelensky, and we will. He is the best president of Ukraine." A complete, like, no joke, a complete 180 from prior statements that have been made by the President of the United States in just the past week and a week and a half. This was a legitimate quote today. Of course, we don't show videos of them saying this, because for some reason that's a pretty polarizing thing for some reason, to show actual verbal statements from the presidents, both the prior one and the current one, so we don't show them on the channel. But this is a direct quote that I was actually able to hear in true worded form today by the President of the United States inside of a meeting, a diplomatic conference with the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom inside the White House today. So it now appears that Zelensky has went from being the dogged devil of the world to now the greatest president of Ukraine in their national history, beating out literally every other figure historically, according to the President of the United States, that has ever existed as a leader of any kind of a proto-Ukrainian state, a Ukrainian state, or a modern-day Ukrainian state. Zelensky now, according to the President, is hands down the greatest one that's ever existed in history. So it seems as though that is a big change from going from he's a dictator and an absolute dog and a devil to now he's the greatest president that Ukraine has ever seen, and the United States really wants to work with Ukraine well on into the future. We've also
I heard the whole statement that was during this press conference when the president was asked about this whole situation. I'll be honest with you. I think some people are taking his statement to mean that he's maybe forgotten that he said that. To me, it was pretty obvious based on the body language of the president that he was being facetious when he said that. He does recall calling Zelensky a dictator, and he did do that. We saw it clearly on video. But now that something's happened in the background, either the Russians are playing really stupid and they're not negotiating in good faith anymore with the president, and he's basically flip-flopped and basically decided to call Zelensky what he is, which is the president of Ukraine who's legitimate. He kind of chuckled when he said it. And once again, I'm not going to comment on whether or not, his statements make any sense or not. You can decide that. But it looks like maybe this was a feint to try to get the Russians to talk by basically appeasing them all the way, because now it appears that he's flipping right back over to the Ukraine side once he wasn't able to get the Russians to the table. So the people that said that could actually end up being right. It seems like it could be the case.
Also, another thing that I didn't include a bulletin on, but this was also something that y'all would have seen if you watched the meeting between the President of the United States and the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, is that a British journalist asked the President of the United States, excuse me, Mr. President, what do you think about your prior statements that Zelensky is a dictator? And the President of the United States said, wow, I said that? Really? I can't believe it. I don't know why I would have ever said that. And also there was like a little bit of a laugh, like Matthew was saying on another statement. He gave a little bit of a laugh and everyone kind of laughed in the room. So it appears that all of his prior statements that he's made that were derogatory about Zelensky, or the fact that he is currently the sitting president of the state of Ukraine, in more or less of a form, have pretty much been rescinded today by the United States. So it appears that now we're going right back to where we've been for the past 3 years, that the state of Ukraine is the rightful side, the rightful party in this conflict, defending their territory from an illegal Russian invasion, and the Russian Federation is dog-headed and not looking to get to the negotiating table under any kind of circumstances in the future, which is something that anyone would have known. But it does appear that at the exact same time that those statements were being made, a really big update came out of Joint Base Andrews, or Andrews Air Force Base, just to the south of Washington, D.C., as Zelensky's aircraft has now arrived inside of the United States at Joint Base Andrews, and it appears that a meeting in between the President of Ukraine and the President of the United States will be happening tomorrow. And of course, we'll have more news about that once the meeting occurs during that time tomorrow. But one thing that is also really interesting, and one thing that I wanted to talk about, is that the Ukrainians actually have a little Air Force One, and it's a Ukrainian, let me go pull it up for y'all really quickly, a Ukrainian A319, and let me go see if I can get y'all a larger picture of the aircraft. Here it is right here. This is the Ukrainian Air Force One. It's this little modest Airbus A319.
The baby bus. Honestly, that's a fitting airplane for Ukraine. It's not a super big country, but it's still a nice plane. So I would say I like it.
Yeah, I gotta say, I like it pretty good. But you know something I was thinking, man? You know something that would look even more striking than this paint job? Is if they took the entire vertical stabilizer, colored it blue, like a darker blue, like that one in the background, and then put the gold Ukrainian trident on it back there instead. I think, that, honestly, that would look really, really good. But beyond that, beyond the whole visual style of the Ukrainian Air Force One, this is the presidential aircraft of the state of Ukraine, and this is the one that actually did arrive at Joint Base Andrews today. So hopefully we will be able to see that the meeting in between the President of the United States and the President of Ukraine will be fruitful, because it appears that a lot in the background has diplomatically unfolded outside of the U.S.'s hoped favor that they were hoping to build with the Russian Federation, because we're now hearing that today the Russian Federation is really anchoring down their standpoints even farther, as we were now able to hear as of today that Peskov came out and stated that there will be no negotiations on annexed Ukrainian land. According to Peskov, the Ukrainian regions that have been annexed, supposedly by the Russian Federation, are in several parts of Russia and are non-negotiable, meaning that at this point in the conflict right now, The Russian Federation is saying that the areas that they control on the front lines and everything behind it is theirs. They will not give up a single inch of that ground. And not only that, the Russians are actually insisting, as a matter of fact, that the Ukrainians relinquish control at a minimum at this point of the remainder of the oblasts of Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson that are currently not under Russian control at this time. And that is something that is a little bit important to cover that people really aren't giving a lot of credence or a lot of coverage on, is that the Russian Federation is actually demanding at this point, very presumptively, like they actually have a position to demand this from, to claim areas of ground that they have not even been able to take by force, such as the city of Zaporizhia, such as the city of Kherson, which they actually lost in the Ukrainian counterattack in the latter end of 2022, the cities of Kramatorsk and Slovyansk, and practically the remainder of the Donetsk Oblast, which about a third of it is still under Ukrainian control, and the small amount of Luhansk that they also still have within their control as well. The Russians are demanding to get all of it, and it is absolutely insane that they would ever ask such a thing, because that's not really trying to make a compromise where the war ends where it is and really shows that the Russians want peace. The Russians are showing that they want to continue on their conquest through the negotiating table and pretty much ensure that they get a total victory in their books under any circumstances. They are not willing to accept less than that at this point, and I think that that fact at the diplomatic table, along with the fact that France probably made it incredibly clear through the Macron visit just a couple of days ago that Europe could split off and create its own separate sphere and conduct its own bidding, it's probably what's forcing the President of the United States to have to make some major changes in his approach to the foreign policy situation regarding the Russian Federation. Because there is no way to even reason with the Russian Federation. It is an unreasonable country at heart, and not only that, the Europeans have made it fairly clear that they're not going to be standing for such actions by the United States that would compromise European security well on into the future. And not only that, if the U.S. would leave the Europeans pretty much out to dry on their own without the United States being there, why would Europe ever allow the United States to put them into a position that practically opens the door for the Russians to continue to conduct acts of aggression against the whole of Europe? And the country that largely facilitated that, the United States, wouldn't even be there to help out the Europeans or provide them security assurances. It seems as though all of those things combined have really started to turn the tables on the U.S. stance and position on the Russian Federation and the Ukraine war. So I'm having a feeling, I'll be entirely honest with y'all, that there's going to be a little moment here coming up in the future where the president goes, excuse me, I need everybody in the Pentagon here. And they all come and he goes, okay, so I've changed my mind on everything. Like, we're not going to be saying all the stuff that we've been saying. We're going to give $500 billion to Ukraine. We're going to bomb the shit out of the Russians. So we're going to get to it, because that's probably, at this point, what's going to be inevitable. Because now the United States, to lay this out to y'all, these are the ways that it could go at this point. Now the United States has a couple of options. We can do another 180, which is most likely going to be unlikely at this point, because enough 180s have been made. But there will be another 180 made, possibly, where we once again start going back to chastising the Ukrainians and saying that the Ukrainian government is a bad government, the Russians are good people, to see if we can get the Russians to the negotiating table, which didn't work. Or we're going to go with the second option, which I believe is more likely at this point, that the United States of America is just going to start funneling more money in the form of arms support into the Ukrainian state, so that way they can start to dominate the Russians on the battlefield through superior firepower, continue to destroy critical infrastructure behind the lines, and eventually through those actions drive the Russians to their knees, to where they actually have no choice but to come to the negotiating table and largely accept American and Ukrainian terms that we would want to see in Ukraine at this point. But nevertheless, the U.S. president has claimed that he never called Zelensky a dictator. Well, actually, largely to clarify that a little bit, he didn't say that he never called him a dictator. He said, wow, I said that? I can't believe that. That's crazy. And it was kind of like a joke, but pretty much saying that he never called him a dictator and pretty much rescinding all of those statements. And the President of the United States also has said that he expects a great visit with Zelensky, who is already in the United States, in Washington, D.C., as of right now. And a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts on this at the moment and what they're thinking about the upcoming Ukrainian-American visit that will be happening in Washington just tomorrow. And a lot of people are saying that the U.S. wants a good relationship with Ukraine. Well, actually, the poll's fairly split amongst three categories, but the winning idea right now is that the U.S. wants good relations with Ukraine. Another idea is that the U.S. is just playing Zelensky like a fiddle now, kind of like they were trying, well, I wouldn't say like a fiddle. I mean, they're trying to play him kind of like they did the Russians, and it appears that trying to play the Russians didn't really work. And then some people are saying it's all part of a plan, of in all caps. But some others are also unsure and undecided. But it is a fairly big question, because one thing I will say is that to make any sense of U.S. foreign policy actions over the past few weeks is difficult, if not impossible. I do have to say that these kinds of rapid developments and changes in U.S. foreign policy have seldom ever been seen. I would actually say, as a matter of fact, they've never really been seen. The only example I could give of this where a U.S. foreign policy stance changed would be the U.S. Foreign policy stance on the Soviet Union during World War II and right after World War II. There was a fairly significant change in that, but that wasn't something that was unforeseen. The United States had already had an incredibly unfriendly relationship with the Soviet Union before the outbreak of the Second World War, and at the end of the Second World War, they once again returned right back to it. And the Soviet Union, of course, mutually returned right back to it as well. The only reason we were allies with the Soviet Union during the Second World War was to create a collective alliance or a united front to defeat Nazi Germany and the fascist Italians inside of Central Europe. But beyond that, there never really was a plan or an objective in U.S. foreign policy long-term, even before that, to ever try and become friends with the Soviet Union full-on. So a change in U.S. policy standing from going to liking Ukraine to hating Ukraine, and then back to loving Ukraine, not just liking them, we're now back to loving them and saying that Ukraine has never been better in their history. These kinds of changes have never really been seen before. So people who are saying that this is probably the last time the foreign policy stance will change, maybe in the right, and the other people who are skeptical have a pretty good reason to be skeptical. But beyond that, a lot of people have been weighing in their opinion. And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well? Because this is a kind of a foreign policy stance, or a flip-flopping of the stance, that has really rarely ever been seen in U.S. history before.
All right. To recap the question one more time, the U.S. president claimed today, basically in theory or in practice, that he never called Zelensky a dictator, even though we saw it on camera. But he did say he expects a good visit between himself and Zelensky, which is going to happen tomorrow morning. And what are your thoughts about that? So 37% said the U.S. wants good relations with Ukraine at this point, while 15% were unsure. 23% said this was all part of a plan, and 25% said the U.S. is just playing Zelensky for now. And once again, it's hard to really tell because the flip-flopping is definitely a really big deal right now. And I'll be honest, I've studied the president's decision-making, not the current one, but the past ones of previous presidencies. And I've never really seen decision-making strategies quite like this one. This is certainly unique. I'm not going to say whether or not I like it or not. Obviously, I'd like it to be a lot more clear so we can report the news a little bit more effectively. But it's definitely an interesting strategy. So I would say that it looks like the U.S. wants good relations with Ukraine. I did see someone in the chat bring up a very good point a moment ago. They basically said when Macron showed up, what could have happened behind closed doors is Macron, who just offered a mineral deal to Ukraine, could be creating a situation where there's a bidding war between the current U.S. president and France, Macron, for the minerals inside of Ukraine. That could be why all of a sudden the president is switching gears a little bit because he doesn't want to lose out on getting Ukraine's minerals. And now Macron is a effective bidder for the minerals himself on behalf of France. So that could be part of it as well. But generally speaking, I don't really personally believe that Zelensky is getting played. Once again, we will see tomorrow during this press conference in the morning what the body language is. That'll give us a very big clue as to exactly what the real situation is. We'll have to see how the president is treating Zelensky in person and how Zelensky generally is handling the president. That'll let us know if there's a lot of tension going on, or maybe they have some sort of agreement behind closed doors that they've sort of come to a mutual understanding. But I would say I'm generally with the 37%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I'm largely going to be with the 37% as well. But I would have to tell y'all I'm going to largely be with Matthew. Macron said something or did something on his visit to the United States that had to, I'm assuming, of course we don't really know because what they talk about in the actual discussions between the presidents or the president and foreign powers is largely left behind closed doors. But I have a feeling that Macron had to have said something like, Monsieur Trump, we're about to screw everyone. And then they went, what? Wait a minute, hold up, what do you mean? And it's because if you realize, only a day after that happened, the President of the United States then came out and said, the European Union was designed to screw the United States, and I have a feeling that that statement was made out of frustration because of what Macron probably made clear on the visit to the United States. We'll wait and see, because of course one thing I have to point out to all of y'all, and this is a very unfortunate thing about history, is that we really don't know exactly what's happening diplomatically right now, but people in about 20 years' time actually will. Because usually by then everything is passed along so far down the line that all these kinds of diplomatic behind the closed doors developments are actually released to the public for everyone to know, and also for folks to go back and revise the history books to make the analysis a little bit more accurate. But I do have a pretty strong feeling that Emmanuel Macron, the president of France, came over here and said some pretty interesting things to the President of the United States that started to change the perspective on what was really going on in Europe and what the U.S. stance really should be on Ukraine for their best interests. Another thing
what do you think about the bidding war theory, by the way? Because I really honestly hadn't thought about that until today, until someone brought it up in the chat. But I did see today that France actually did make a formal mineral deal offer to Ukraine a couple of days ago. I hadn't heard about it until today, actually. So that could be maybe a very big motivation as to why the U.S. has suddenly changed course on Ukraine, because at first it looked like the U.S. was going to be the only bidder outside of Russia stealing the minerals to actually put a bid in to take some of Ukraine's minerals in the future through a minerals deal. But now with France jumping in the fray and putting in a bid of their own, that shakes things up a little bit. It puts some competition in there between the U.S. and France, which could cause the United States to really want to chum up to Zelensky really quick to ensure they don't lose a ton of money in mineral deals.
I would have to say, I think it might actually be the case that maybe there is a bidding war going on. But one thing we do have to remember is that this bidding war going on probably wouldn't be that big of a one, because when we're talking about sheer economic power or investing power, the French are going to lose in that kind of a battle with the United States because they don't have the ability to invest as heavily in resource extraction in Ukraine as the United States would. So maybe maybe that's not even really the fact of the matter. The fact of the matter is that the French could just tie up a great deal of rare metals and resources in Ukraine by having the Ukrainians pretty much sign them away to the French instead of the United States, even if the French wouldn't have the raw amount of investing power to actually extract those resources at fast of a rate as U.S. investing firms could. Maybe possibly that's the case, but I think that the idea of a bidding conflict going on in the background may be one that could be considered, and this may also be a way for Macron to stretch the legs of France pretty much being the emperor of a European Holy Roman Empire in modern form, where they're pretty much the emperor of the HRE in modern form, that is, and we went through that like a couple of days ago. If it doesn't make sense, I can't explain it, so if you don't know what I'm talking about there, everyone in the chat, let me know, and I'll circle around to why I'm pretty much saying that the modern EU is a lot like the old Holy Roman Empire. But beyond that, it could be a way to kind of attempt to stretch the legs on that and show Europe's influence on a global stage, especially in their own backyard in Eastern Europe. So I think that is a decent possibility, but I also think that the French could have leveraged the trade relationship between the two for some pretty big leverage over the United States, because the United States is in a $350 billion trade deficit with the EU year over year, which means that the Europeans actually have a great deal of power over the United States because we rely more on European goods than the Europeans rely on our goods. And also, I see some people saying, could you please explain the whole Holy Roman Empire thing? And I will explain really quickly, and I'm going to make it very short. The Holy Roman Empire was a confederation, and I know a lot of people in the United States think of the Confederates from the Civil War, but a confederation isn't actually the Confederate States of America. It's actually a form of a governmental system where there is a weak central power, but the separated states within this collective country are the ones that actually largely hold their own power and generally have their own autonomy. The European Union is a lot like that in the present day. And while there is an overarching, weaker central form of government inside of the European Union's parliament, generally the power is actually still held within the countries themselves, or really the princely states that make up the European Union, just like the Holy Roman Empire. But out of all of these little princely states, one of them has to come out as the emperor, or largely the leader of this modern Holy Roman Empire. And the French have positioned themselves through decades to pretty much be the leader of that Holy Roman Empire in the modern day, which is what the European Union has largely turned into. So the French, while not being the direct rulers and controllers of the entirety of the European Union's economic abilities and apparatus, they still largely are the guiding North Star of this alliance and get to tell everyone, or not really get to tell everyone, but they tell everyone what they should do and where they're going to be heading. And because of that, the French actually do hold a great deal of economic power over the United States because they're able to leverage the combined $21 trillion economy that the European Union is against the United States in any kind of a major diplomatic row like we're seeing right now. So it really is a situation where the French could leverage something like that over the United States very effectively. As far as a bidding conflict, I think that would be a little less effective because the French may not have the investment ability as an individual nation, not as the entire EU, to actually successfully extract those resources, but maybe it's just about tying up the resources to where no other country could get in there and get them through some sort of a treaty. But beyond that,
it could be also real quick, Enforcer. This is something right here. I saw a question being asked in the live chat. This is actually a very interesting question because y'all might remember we had a big row on this channel. I think it was like 6 months to a year ago about Zelensky wearing a suit or not wearing a suit in the U.S. Congress. Uncle Sam just mentioned in the live chat. He said, is Zelensky going to be wearing his olive green attire or is he going to be wearing a suit based on the pressure from the United States? Honestly, it seems like a mundane thing, but I'll be curious to see if he is wearing a suit tomorrow, just out of curiosity's sake. I might actually run a poll on that to see, because once again, that was a comment that was made by the United States towards Zelensky, I think just a week ago, was the fact that, every time he shows up, he's not wearing a suit. So I'll be curious to see. Once again, I'll be curious to watch the body language tomorrow because typically there's been some tension in the air between those two every time they meet. And I'll be curious to see what the case is this time and see if the friendliness is really manifesting in real life or if it's simply in words only. I'll be curious to see.
I will be interested to see that. Really, that will be something interesting. And I see it's beginning the firestorm again. No suit, no suit. Like it's beginning again. But still, there is no right or wrong answer to it. I'll be entirely honest. Like I used to be very adamant about the suit. Now I really don't care. It's like suit or no suit doesn't really matter. But it's still something that is a big point of discussion and actually a pretty fiery one at that. You would never think that fashion would be something on this channel that would get the army riled up and ready to fight. But nevertheless, a lot of people have some very strong opinions on suit or no suit. But beyond that, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news little bit of news. It's major news inside the United States as far as it goes diplomatically and as far as the Russian statement on territories went today as well. But something crazy happened that was unexpected. Lukashenko actually said that he believes that Ukraine should be involved in issues involving its own nation, meaning that he is saying that in the peace negotiations, Ukraine has to have a seat at the table according to Lukashenko, which is something that I honestly didn't expect because Lukashenko and Belarus as a whole are largely Putin's puppet, so it is wild to see him just go completely against the grain, completely against what Putin is saying about the negotiations and say, you know what, they actually think that they should be at the negotiating table. It's like, that's a little wild. You would never expect that one. So that's whack. Like, I'm not going to lie. That's just whack. I don't know what kind of consequences are going to be coming Lukashenko's way because of that, but I think that Putin's power is beginning to wane, so he might not really be able to do much, and that's why Lukashenko felt emboldened to say something like that. Meanwhile, France, as far as the international diplomatic events are going, is in talks with Ukraine to access their mineral resources, but stressed that unlike the United States, it's not seeking them in exchange for its aid in Ukraine's fight against the Russian Federation. So the French are just simply looking at it as an investment opportunity and not really looking to be repaid for any kind of military support provided in the past or into the future. So that is something interesting in its own right. But beyond the statement that they are looking into a mineral deal, a Franco-led mineral deal, we're not really hearing much more about that at this point beyond just the proposition of it to Ukraine. But we do know that tomorrow, just to make this a little bit clear, tomorrow we are going to be getting a very good idea as to whether that rough draft agreement that we saw circulated around Twitter actually will be the agreement that Zelensky signs or not, because we are understanding that it probably will be tomorrow or the next day that Zelensky signs that mineral agreement inside the United States. So we'll be waiting to see what happens with that, but we're very interested in that. I hope that we get to see the actual answer to that here quite soon. But before we get into that, there is an absolute bloodbath raging in the chat. Suit or no suit? That's what everyone's asking. To be or not to be, that is the question. And it appears that there are a lot of people in here right now that are just slaughtering each other. It's an actual battle in the chat. It's very rare to see that. But will Zelensky wear a suit to tomorrow's meeting with the U.S. president at the White House? Many are saying no. Some are saying yes. And very few are saying that they're unsure. So, Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so only 25% said yes, he will wear a suit, while 65%, the overwhelming majority, said no, he will wear his usual attire, most likely his green military fatigues that he likes to wear. And this is an interesting question right here. Honestly, if I were in Zelensky's shoes, not because I'd be bowing down to the president or anything like that, but simply I would show up and wear a suit and I'd make a joke about it. Just to sort of show some class, like on a sort of like a jovial level. I would do that just for kind of like, I guess you could say, trying to lighten the mood a little bit. I would make a joke about it and wear a suit. But the odds are, honestly, he might not be wearing one tomorrow. I think he's going to stick with his usual, which could, work to his disadvantage, because apparently the current U.S. president thinks very highly of people that wear suits and not so much of people that don't wear suits in the White House. So I'm not sure if that's going to be a big issue or not, but probably not, and he's probably not going to wear a suit would be my guess. But Enforcer, what say you?
I've got to be honest with you. As the President of the United States, I care a great deal about suits, a lot of suits. There's lots of different types. But one thing I'll tell you is that a lot of people in the chat keep on bringing up birthday suit. A lot of people are saying that Zelensky ought to wear a birthday suit. And I got to be entirely honest with you. I don't know a lot about birthday suits. Usually I wear the same suit on my birthdays. I wear every single day. But beyond that, one thing I do have to say, just to make it fairly clear, is that the White House is not a nudist colony. We are not going to be having nudists running around the White House. So if you're talking about a birthday suit is in, they're not wearing anything. Hell no, we're not doing that. That would be very gross and very weird. But on the other hand, if it's Rosie O'Donnell, a lot of people might die from the sight of it. So nevertheless, I hope that does address that somewhat well. But I will be entirely honest, getting past the joke, I do believe that Zelensky will probably be wearing his normal green olive outfit, as I call it, the little Che Guevara. I'm just kidding. Like, it's like I was gonna
the little Che Guevara. What?
Well, you always wore green fatigues, didn't you know that?
Oh yeah, I knew that. Now, hopefully the current president doesn't view that as the Che Guevara outfit or something, because he just backed off the statements about Zelensky being a dictator. So, interesting. I'll be curious to see it. Like, seriously, I'm anticipating this press conference kind of like I'm anticipating the next Squid Game release. Honestly, this is going to be very interesting to watch tomorrow. I hope the whole thing's on camera. Because there will be a lot to get out of it. And I'm sure we'll be able to watch maybe some of it, hopefully, if it's not copyrighted, that is. We'll be able to watch it and maybe show pieces of it on the short war video tomorrow. Because it's going to be certainly something to see.
I gotta say, it will be something to see. I'm going to be very interested in how it goes. Because once again, we have seen, I want to make this a little bit clear, some people may not know this, that the current president and Zelensky actually did meet, I believe, once or twice before the president became the president, after the election results in the United States had been ratified. So there have been meetings in between the president and Zelensky. It's just that there's never been a meeting yet while he's been the sitting president once more. So we do not really know how this is going to go. I have a feeling, though, that the statements made today, this is trying to apply logic to something where logic may not exist, but they are going to stand up tomorrow, I would hope, because it would only make reasonable sense that they would. And, of course, sometimes that isn't really the going trend, but I hope that we largely stand true with that sort of analysis and that remains the case. But still, It's going to be a wild thing. I don't know how it's going to go, because what if they change the mineral agreement at the last minute again? Or
That
what?
would be dirty. That would be so dirty if they did that. And honestly, I don't know who Zelensky's bringing with him, but this is one thing I was slightly worried about, like you just mentioned. If Zelensky comes very light with only like himself and maybe another person, it could be that the current president brings in a posse of people to sort of pressure Zelensky and put the old-fashioned pressure on him to sign the deal. That could be a strategy that he could be about to use tomorrow, because of course, when you have somebody in your Oval Office and you have them surrounded with your allies, all of a sudden they feel a little bit not so protected anymore. Not that they would get into a fight, but just they feel a little bit pressured. So hopefully Zelensky's coming with his entourage, so that way they can sort of be on a level playing field here and not feel like there's undue pressure on one side or another.
Hopefully so. Like, maybe that's the case. But then again, Zelensky does always travel around with a large amount of bodyguards at this point because of the threat of Russian assassination. So there should be a decent amount of bodyguards present. I'm not really sure if that detail will be allowed inside the White House. I have a feeling that probably wouldn't be allowed. So hopefully we'll be able to see that. But then again, man, Zelensky isn't really like new to the scene of these kinds of pressure tactics and things. Like, Zelensky would be like, listen, I grew up in the streets of Kryvyi Rih. Shit was tough back then, and it was really tough growing up, so this is nothing new to me. Like, dude, he probably would sit there with like 5 people literally breathing down his neck and be like, hold up, I'm reading it. Something like that. He would be like, give me a minute.
Well, the old strategy. You know how it works. Like you bring in like a really thick contract. It's like 1,000 pages thick or something like that, and you give it to him. It's like, okay, there's the deal, Zelensky. Like, go ahead and sign it. It's like he obviously won't have enough time to read something that thick, and you could have every a term under the sun in there. If that's the case, if I was Zelensky, I would simply say, hey, look, we're gonna need to take a copy of this and go read it or something like that. We're not going to be signing anything right here, right now. And I'm sure the cameras will be rolling too. So that'll be a tense situation if it's on camera. Because obviously everybody's going to be watching that. And Zelensky doesn't want to piss the U.S. president off, obviously, but he's trying to make sure the relations are good. But at the same time, he wants to be able to read the agreement. So hopefully nothing like that happens. That would be a real shady or really underhanded thing to do. Hopefully that's not the way it goes. But, you never know.
I have to be completely honest with you that the Secretary of the Treasury came to Kyiv and tried to pull a fast one on me, but I have been around the block. I have seen a scam here and there. It's a fairly common thing, at least when I was growing up in Ukraine. And so I knew what he was doing, and then I sent it off to my attorneys, and then they said it was ridiculous. And so then I said no. But dude, that was actually smart by him, man. He looked at it, he said, I'm going to send this on. And then the Secretary of the Treasury was like, this ain't going to work. He's like, it's about to fall apart right here. And also, let's see. I see some people saying some different things. Let's see. Uncle Sam said Zelensky should invite the president to Kyiv to see himself that foreign aid's not being stolen. I feel like that would be a good thing to do, to invite the president of the United States to Kyiv. The prior president, I believe, went there once or twice. I think it was once at least at a minimum. I think maybe twice, but it probably would be good to bring the current president of the United States to Kyiv to show the actual conditions that are going on, at least even in the capital alone, as the country is fighting a full-on war. Because I don't ever believe that the president of the United States, the current one, has ever been to Kyiv during the conflict. So I'm sure that would actually do a great deal of good in conveying the kind of situation that they're actually in, instead of the one that's just believed to be the situation by some here in the United States, like Tucky G. But beyond that, I hope that addresses that fairly well, at least in my opinion. And with that, it is time for us to get on into the remainder of the news that we have tonight. We actually have some interesting news out in the Western Pacific, some incredibly interesting news about the People's Republic of China and Taiwan. But before we get into that, I do have to say a big shout out to the 9.3 thousand people who have been here tonight, and a massive, incredible shout out to the 9,100 people or so that are here right now. I hope y'all been enjoying the stream so far, and if y'all have, please make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, because we run this thing 6 days a week. every day but Monday at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into our Western Pacific news, where we were able to see that in the Taiwan Strait today, another larger number of People's Liberation Army Navy and aircraft were seen within the area. We were able to hear that there is heavy PLA activity in the Taiwan Strait today. China has sent 45 warplanes and 15 vessels to the vicinity of Taiwan in the last 24 hours, as the PLA has conducted its 5th Joint Combat Readiness Patrol of the month. 34 sorties crossed the median line and entered Taiwan's central and southwestern air defense identification zone. And we have been able to see these activities listed on a map of Taiwan, or otherwise known as the Republic of China, right here. We can see that within the northern area, within Square 1, up at the top area, top right area of the map, that there were 4 sorties of fighters and support aircraft within that area. Throughout the entirety of the median line of the Taiwan Strait, there was around 21 sorties of fighters, bombers, support aircraft, and drones, and 14 sorties crossed the median line within that region. In the number 3 block, which is where the live fire exercises are currently being conducted, somewhere within that local vicinity, we can see that there were 20 sorties of fighters, bombers, support aircraft, helicopters, and UAVs. The presence of helicopters most likely suggests that those helicopters were being launched from the deck of their destroyers that were within the area and were being used for submarine probing operations, dropping the dips, such things like that. And we were also able to see that within the 4th bracket down here, within the center of the bottom of the map, there were around 7 People's Liberation Army Navy ships, which are in an incredibly close vicinity to Taiwan, and that's apparently where the live fire exercise is being conducted at this point. But beyond that, it does appear that the Chinese are continuing to conduct their low-level coercion attempts against the Republic of China, and we also got to see a video today that was actually put out by the Taiwanese Ministry of National Defense as they were shadowing the Chinese fleet south of Taiwan and observing their actions. We can see what appears to be some sort of a PLAN auxiliary vessel to the right side of the screen, and what appears to be a PLAN destroyer to the left side of the screen. We can see the Republic of China Coast Guard, I believe, contacting the vessels.
Man, do you remember that exchange between the U.S. and the Chinese warplanes and the ships and stuff like that? That really goofy exchange. Do you remember that one?
I am operating within the confines of international law. You go! You go!
Man, it's dang, okay. It's all right.
Dude. And then eventually on another one, they said the same thing. I'm a United States military aircraft conducting an operation within international airspace. I'm well within the parameters of international law. And then the guy went, meow, or something like that, and that was the response. It's the goofiness. But beyond that, we are seeing that right now the Republic of China is once again facing down a fairly large flotilla of the People's Liberation Army Navy about 45 miles southwest of Kaohsiung, which is one of the largest cities within that area of Taiwan. And we are also hearing that apparently there is a large amount of aircraft, People's Liberation Army Air Force aircraft, that are also flying operations all the way to the north of the island, near to Taipei, through the median, and then also down near to the live fire exercise. Not only that, we have heard a very strongly worded statement today from the Chinese Ministry of Defense, as we were able to hear this statement. The Chinese Ministry of Defense, in short, warned the Taiwanese nation, or the Republic of China, that we will come and take you sooner or later, meaning that the Ministry of Defense of China made it incredibly clear today that they will be conducting a forceful reunification of the island if they do not accept China's demands right now. And to lay out this is something that some people do not know. The Chinese are not absolutely hell-bent on taking Taiwan through military action. They actually are trying to push the military action threats to force the Taiwanese to accept a diplomatic solution, which pretty much would be the exact same as if the Chinese actually landed on the island and took it, which is forcing the Taiwanese to agree to a one state, two systems arrangement. This has been proven to be disastrous throughout every single area that China has been able to conduct this. Most specifically within the Crown Colony, or the former Crown Colony of Hong Kong, which was once controlled by the British, handed over in 1997. Pretty much a lot of people say that that was the end of the British Empire, but as Hong Kong was handed over, the Chinese nation agreed that a one-state, two-systems model would be implemented. And over the next 50 years after 1997, the People's Republic of China would slowly integrate Hong Kong into the mainland. And 50 years after 1997, on the very day of, Hong Kong would pretty much become an official part of the Chinese mainland, pretty much completely indistinguishable and inseparable from the remainder of the People's Republic of China. That was proven to be a complete lie in 2019 when the People's Republic of China began to extradite criminals in Hong Kong into the Chinese mainland to be held accountable for their crimes and held on trial by Chinese Communist government courts. This caused major protests and riots within the city of Hong Kong in response, and in response to that, the People's Liberation Army was deployed into the city of Hong Kong, and Hong Kong practically became a part of the People's Republic of China within the next few years. At this point in time, it really is practically inseparable and almost indistinct from the actual mainland of China at this point, and the one-state, two-systems model was completely violated over those next few years. As a result of that, Taiwan actually saw a major shift in their internal foreign policy politics structure. This is something that we actually have to explain here. Is a little bit important about Taiwanese politics. One of the major things that defines the Taiwanese political structure is not just their understanding of what Taiwan is, but the relationship with the mainland Chinese. And up until that point in 2019, there was actually a fairly strong movement inside of Taiwan throughout major political parties at the time to actually try and seek some form of reunification with mainland China. And the main prevailing argument at that time by those political parties in Taiwan was that it went well for Hong Kong and it couldn't go that badly for us either. And it would also finally resolve this issue once and for all. But once the riots in Hong Kong happened and the major military put-down was began by the People's Liberation Army and the Chinese Communist Party, that completely shifted the Taiwanese political landscape into completely denying any form of reunification with the Chinese mainland, and the only party that supports that nowadays is the Kuomintang, which is called the KMT. It's a really, really complicated thing to explain how that works, but we will explain it because it's very important to understanding Taiwan. Back in the day, Communist China didn't exist. Many of y'all know that Communist China only started to exist after 1949. But to show y'all what the Chinese looked like before this, we have to show y'all the Republic of China, which had this flag right here, which is honestly an eyesore, or this one, which is the one y'all probably all know because this is the flag of Taiwan. But the Republic of China existed over the whole of China, including a little bit of Mongolia and a little bit of Tibet. These really weren't areas that were actually controlled by the Republic of China. Really, the only area that was controlled by them was in green. But the thing is that this wasn't entirely controlled by the Republic of China. This is called the era of the warlords to most countries historically. And to show y'all really quickly what the Chinese actually looked like, I'd be dipped. They're not going to show that, are they? Dang, it's going to be really hard to explain that without a good map. And I guess I'm going to have to try and explain it without a good map. So basically, the Republic of China's government only really controlled the major population centers up to Beijing and south from that towards to the area, I believe, of Guangzhou these days. That area was controlled directly by the Republic of China. Everything else was controlled by different warlords of various types. So there were warlords off in the far west of China that controlled it very loosely under the Republic of China's framework, but still were almost completely separate in real practice. Later on in the 1930s, the Japanese would end up taking control of Manchuria and creating Manchukuo, which was a puppet regime installed by the Japanese that was entirely dependent on the Japanese for instructions and governance. And then over the next 10 years or so, actually it was 11 years, from 1936 to 1945, the Chinese actually fought the Japanese across pretty much the entirety of China for those next 11 years. And that was largely done by the Republic of China's government, which was led by Chiang Kai-shek, which was a nationalist party and largely was a dictatorship because Chiang Kai-shek was never democratically elected during his entire time in charge of the Republic of China. During this time, there was a little faction that really didn't exist called the Chinese Communist Party that would end up existing somewhere near to the area, and I'll try and show you all this, near to the southern areas of Jiangxi, which is really where they're from. And there's also some mountains down here. I forgot what they're called, but it's like the Xinjiang Mountains. Y'all think I'm making up that name, but it's very close to the actual name of it. But those are really the mountains where we saw that the original Chinese Communist movement by Mao Zedong would end up existing. And then in 1929, there was a major betrayal by Chiang Kai-shek, who said that he wouldn't attack the communists. He attacked them, and that's what led Mao to conduct something called the Long March, which is where the communist Chinese marched a whopping, I believe it was around 2,000 or so, 2,500 miles, I believe, on foot into what they called the mountain refuge of Xi'an, which is now a major city inside of China, but at the time was fairly rural and detached from really any warlord's control or even Chiang Kai-shek's control. Chiang Kai-shek made a fatal error at the time in not chasing down the communists and completely destroying them, which will come back later to haunt him. So now fast forwarding back up to 1945, World War II ends, and the entire area of Manchuria is not controlled by Japan any longer. It's now controlled by the Soviet Union. And the Soviet Union gave the entire area to Mao Zedong, very reluctantly, mind you, but they still gave it to him. And this gave Mao Zedong the population and resource base necessary to launch the civil war against Chiang Kai-shek in the Republic of China. And from 1945 to 1949, Mao Zedong eventually would end up overpowering Chiang Kai-shek, dominating the entire area of mainland China, and Chiang Kai-shek and his Republic of China government would go into exile on the island of Taiwan. And that's how Taiwan exists today. Now, getting all the way back around to that, the ruling party of the Republic of China during the time that they were on the mainland before the Civil War ended in defeat was the Kuomintang, or the KMT, which was Chiang Kai-shek's party. They are incredibly nationalist, hyper-nationalist, as a matter of fact. And so the Republic of China's government is entirely, well, the Kuomintang's party model is entirely based around reunifying China in the modern day at all costs, because this hyper-nationalistic sort of a history that they have, and they've evolved it into the modern day. And so nowadays, the Kuomintang is the only political party in Taiwan. The literal reason why, mind you, that Taiwan exists is because of the Kuomintang, and the Kuomintang is the only political party that exists in Taiwan in the modern day that actually advocates for reunification with the Communist Chinese, simply for the fact that it would further the idea of unifying all Chinese under one Chinese nation. So that is the entire lore and history of Taiwanese internal politics on foreign policy, or kind of explaining the situation that's going on there right now. But now the Chinese are making it incredibly clear, because of these sorts of internal foreign policy developments, largely brought on by Xi Jinping's heavy-handed dealings with Hong Kong during the riots in 2019, that whether the Taiwanese peacefully rejoin or forcefully rejoin isn't a question. It is a fact that the People's Republic of China is going to try and make them a part of Communist China one way or the other, pretty much telling them that they can either do it the easy way or the hard way. The choice is yours. But beyond that, a lot of people are talking about the United States' idleness in any kind of a statement made that we have not heard yet, backing up the Taiwanese in this kind of a struggle at the moment, because China has begun launching more military exercises, which are largely threats, around the entirety of Taiwan. And a lot of people are wondering, should the U.S. military intervene? And it seems as though a lot of people are saying yes. The United States, well, not the United States military, should the United States as a whole intervene in any way? And a lot of people are saying yes, the United States should make a statement. Others are saying let's sit back and wait first. And some are saying the U.S. should stay neutral for now and just completely remove itself from the situation. And others are unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So it looks like 62% of the audience said yes, the U.S. should make a statement about Taiwan's independence, while 18% said let's sit back and wait, and 15% said no, the U.S. should stay neutral for now. So this question basically revolves around, if you were in charge of the United States, what is the best way to ensure that we don't enrage China to the point of getting really hostile with the United States, and also weighing out Taiwan's independence and also their sovereignty as well? This is a bit of a tricky one, to be honest, because it seems like pretty straightforward, like the U.S. should come out and make a statement. But the only problem is the U.S. already made a statement, and it basically said we may or may not help Taiwan. So probably not the best statement to make, to be honest. We should have probably said we support Taiwan, and that would have probably calmed China down just a little bit. It would have made them angry temporarily, but it would have told them that long term, we are in for their independence. So generally, after what's been said, I would say let's sit back and wait. Let's see what China's actually up to. And then when the time comes, we're going to make a decision whether or not the U.S. is going to support Taiwan. In my opinion, I 100% support Taiwan. We should not abandon them, just like we should not abandon Ukraine. But, the time will come when that decision must be made in the near future, I'm sure. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I believe that the United States should completely stand with Taiwan and make statements in support of the sovereignty of the Taiwanese government on the island. I think that's something that would be incredibly important well on into the future, because Taiwan doesn't matter just because of TSMC and the semiconductors. Taiwan is the largest island that's a part of the island containment chain between Japan and the Philippines. This is something that's actually kind of cool to look at. There is a huge amount of little islands that stretch from Japan down to Taiwan. Every single one of these, including Yonaguni, are all controlled by Japan. So this entire area of the island chain defensive line is controlled by Japan, but largely can count on the United States for military support if needed because of the U.S. bases in Okinawa, which you can see right here at Kadena Air Force Base. Beyond that, south of Taiwan, there is a stretch of smaller little islands. I believe, if I remember correctly, these are controlled sort of jointly by the Philippines and the Republic of China in some instances, but still another part of that island chain. The Philippines is, of course, Western and American aligned, so they can be counted to be a part of that defensive line. And then we are trying right now to see what we can do with Indonesia, because if we can really cut off the Strait of Malacca to the Chinese, we pretty much have them cornered inside the South China Sea and the East China Sea, and they really can't leave it from there, especially in the outbreak of a major war, because these shallower areas where these island chains exist are incredibly formidable, especially for submarines to pass through. It would be fairly difficult, so we would be able to stop the Chinese from conducting unrestricted submarine warfare outside of their coastal waters, which means that effectively the United States supply lines in that kind of a war are largely secure, and we're not having to draw additional resources to conduct convoy escorts in large numbers to be able to protect U.S., I guess you could say, U.S. shipping interests and U.S. Military supplies from some form of a Chinese submarine attack. And that's largely why the island containment chain exists. And if Taiwan was to fall and become a People's Republic of China-led island, this means that the People's Republic of China now has the ability and necessity to be able to build naval bases on the east coast of Taiwan, meaning that those harbors would be able to house submarines, and they would be able to operate unrestricted submarine warfare throughout the entirety of the Pacific and at large throughout the majority of the world in limited stints. So it's very important that we maintain control over Taiwan, or that the Taiwanese remain sovereign, because it's a significant part of our island containment chain. Taiwan actually doesn't even have to be a part of a U.S.-led defensive alliance. It just has to exist as its own entity that does not allow the Chinese military to actually build up naval forces or any kind of forces on the island. If they did that, the entire island containment chain falls apart. If they remain neutral or even Western aligned, they add a great asset, because we are now able to make sure that Chinese submarines have to be funneled through the shallow waters near to the Japanese island chain or near to the Filipino island chain just south of Taiwan, which means that really any submarine that passes through that area could possibly be detected or caught before it's able to make it into open waters, and this would greatly cut down on the threat that would be seen to long stretched out supply lines that the U.S. Navy would have to operate to be able to conduct a war within the Western Pacific. So,
I think a huge factor in the current U.S. administration supporting Taiwan, it basically comes down to something this simple, in my opinion. Basically, how long is it going to take TSMC to get fully established in the United States to where they don't rely on their Taiwanese facilities to actually develop the semiconductors? I have a feeling that once TSMC is fully ingrained in the United States economy and they're here domestically in North America, that could be the moment the U.S. decides to basically let Taiwan go. And that could be the moment that China decides to invade it, because they realize the thing of value, which was the semiconductor industry, has already left. And that was the main reason why the U.S. was probably protecting the island in the first place. That could be a little oversimplified, but honestly, I think that might be the way the current U.S. administration is looking at it. And if that is the case, that would mean Taiwan will probably be protected into probably a couple of years into the future, but not much long after that. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say, I believe that Taiwan should be protected even into the future, even once TSMC makes it to the United States for strategic interests alone, not just economic interests. But something else I saw, and this is something that has to be clarified here, is that Scotty Sizzle said something correct, but there's a bit of a caveat to that. Scotty Sizzle said, "Fun fact: the U.S. military has yet to run a successful war game scenario in which the U.S. defends Taiwan." Believe it or not, that's actually true. But believe it or not, every time we do a war game, for the large part every time the United States conducts a war game in the military, we handicap ourselves significantly. The war games aren't to win. They're always pretty much structured to lose, but the way we lose is incredibly important, because there are a lot more lessons learned in failure than there is in success. That's incredibly true by pretty much all metrics. And so when we start a war game scenario about defending Taiwan, we'll say something like there are only 2 aircraft carrier strike groups available. There's a very limited number of destroyers. Chinese submarines have been able to break out into the Pacific and are conducting unrestricted warfare against U.S. auxiliaries that are trying to supply our fleets within that area. And it also appears that there's been an attack on Guam, and the only facility within the entire Pacific in that region that could reload vertical launch cells on board our warships has been disabled. And for this reason, the ammunition on board the warships is the only ammunition they'll have throughout the entire conflict without making the long journey back to Hawaii or all the way back to the Pacific coastline to be able to rearm. So with those kinds of handicaps in place, the U.S. strategists and war gamers then have to play out the scenario, which they always will lose. But because they lose, they have to figure out why did they lose and what would be the best case scenario to work around those failures if they were to actually pop up. So pretty much it's trying to fail-safe any kind of a war game scenario where we're pretty much getting our ass handed to us on day one. If an actual conflict began with Taiwan, make no mistake, it actually would be a bit of a nasty affair, because we would be fighting the Chinese pretty much in their home territory navally, and as far as power projection-wise, it's literally right off their coast, and the United States would have to have a multi-thousand-mile-long supply line stretch all the way across the Pacific to be able to support our forces in that area. So technically, on the logistical side of things, the Chinese do have the home ground fighting advantage, but at the same time, there are a lot of other advantages that they could achieve that would make things far more difficult for us, and those war games are supposed to help us to learn how to kind of deal with those shortcomings, or how to recommend to Congress funding appropriations that would be needed to be able to deal with some of those inevitable shortcomings that may come up in that kind of a conflict. Which, I'll be entirely honest, much has been learned from these war games, even that's been publicly stated by the Navy. One of the things that we really know at this point is that a lot of the United States Navy's power projection abilities and also ability to sustain fleet operations this far away from the United States right off the Chinese coast would be a little difficult, as a matter of fact, and the U.S. Navy requires a significant increase in funding to increase the number of auxiliaries and also to increase the number of modern destroyers, frigates, and corvettes that are in U.S. operation to be able to conduct those anti-submarine operations, to be able to protect our auxiliaries while the main bulk of our fighting fleet was actually over there within the Western Pacific. So there is a lot that has been learned, but I would have to say that there's been a great deal of inaction in the Congress in terms of funding to actually deal with these major shortcomings that may make the United States pay dearly in the outbreak of that kind of a conflict. Really, to be honest with y'all, the U.S. would never pay dearly in considerable losses, just to let y'all know. There could be some destroyers lost. That most likely would be inevitable. Carrier fleets would probably never be lost because those are considered vital assets and they're wildly expensive. So for that reason, if it ever looked like a carrier was in any sort of jeopardy or risk of being sunk, they most likely would be withdrawn from the area and Taiwan would pretty much be left to fight on their own. But we really don't want a situation like that. We want a situation where the carriers and their fleets can pretty much hang in close and slug it out throughout the battle, and that really requires us to fortify and strengthen our anti-submarine warfare abilities primarily. That's one of the weakest areas that we have at the moment, and also our ability to support and protect fleet auxiliaries that are making the long voyage across the Pacific out there into the Western Pacific to be able to support and replenish those fighting fleets that would be operating close into Taiwan. And also, Walter Lakota, you are correct. I was trying to think about the name of that. Those are the sea lift capabilities I'm talking about, and those are some of the things that I believe the Navy has highlighted as some of the most vulnerable in the present day, especially in a hypothetical war with China over the defense of Taiwan. I
just wonder if TSMC is thinking in the back of their minds, maybe we should drag out the transfer of some of our facilities and building those in America, because that might play a pivotal role in whether or not the U.S. is going to actually defend their home country, their headquarters, which is in Taiwan. I wonder if that's come across their mind just yet, because according to what I've seen in the chat, people are still saying that the TSMC facilities in the United States are still years away from finishing development, which sounds like it probably is the case. And that would guarantee their protection for at least a few more years. But it seems like by moving that over here, if they're trying to move their entire operation over to the United States where they're fully independent and not dependent on the Taiwanese island to develop the chips, it seems like they're basically working against their own national interest doing that.
Kind of so. I would agree. But I think in the end, the United States might just have to support Taiwan anyways because of the rapidly shifting situation with China. It's not the China of the 80s, the 90s, and the early 2000s anymore. It's almost like Mao Zedong's China before the Nixon visit. And I think that's going to start changing our strategy to where even if TSMC isn't in Taiwan, future administrations probably will start to heavily support the Taiwanese and pretty much integrate them into the island defense chain in full.
Yeah, maybe so. I hope that's the case. I hope. But whatever the case is, hopefully we stand by Taiwan for many years to come because there is as important as Ukraine, in my opinion. So hopefully we're standing by it.
And also, I saw someone say, what about Guam? That's actually something that is very understated. Let me show y'all something cool, and not really that cool, but it is cool in a way. The Arleigh-Burke-class destroyers are the backbone of the Navy's destroyer fleet in the modern day. They pretty much are the only destroyers in service these days. But one thing that's neat is that on most of them, I'm turning into Mike Tyson over here, but on most of them, you can find these really cool little systems that they call vertical launch cells. And I'm trying to see if I can find y'all a picture of that here. And let's see here. Well, I'd be dipped. I guess I'm going to just have to show y'all the one up here where they were conducting the test launches. Right here. These are launches from vertical launch cells, which are cells that are vertically placed inside the hull of the vessel where the missiles fire straight up and out of the cell and then towards their target. These are just wonderful systems, a massive revolution in terms of firepower availability for modern vessels, because no matter how many targets are flying towards the ship, the Arleigh-Burkes are able to fire an unlimited volume of missiles from these vertical launch cells as long as they still have ammo. The problem is that when a vertical launch cell or the entire battery of vertical launch cells run out of ammo, there's no way to replenish them at sea. So they have to go back to a port to and have a special, pretty much dock constructed to be able to reload these vertical launch cells properly. The only one within the entire Western Pacific that can reload these vertical launch cells is Guam. Outside of that, the only other one is back in Honolulu in Hawaii, and then there's also a couple of those along the west coast of the United States. But as far as we are concerned in a conflict with China, Guam is largely an Achilles heel for this reason, and this major revolution in the amount of firepower that can be leveraged by a single destroyer actually ends up becoming a major fault because there's no way to conduct undersea replenishments of ammunition stocks for these vessels. They have to return back to Guam to be able to be rearmed, and that means that the Chinese ever conducted a surprise strike on the U.S. Navy harbor that's able to reload these vertical launch cells at Guam, all of these destroyers will have to return back to Honolulu, or if Honolulu is knocked out, they'll have to return all the way back to California or the state of Washington to be able to rearm their vertical launch cells, and then they'll have to take the voyage all the way back across the Pacific to rejoin the fight, which could take a lot of ships out of action, especially if the Chinese keep up a high-intensity volume of fire at the beginning of that conflict, because these ships could run out of ammo and then immediately have to turn right back around and head all the way back to the United States to rearm. So this has been something that the Navy has been talking about for a while, is whether they should start to consider to bring back the older launch systems, which I can show y'all on the older, let me see here. Let me think. You know, we'll just pull up the Long Beach class because this is the one that's on my mind. I was going to pull up the Ticonderoga, but this was the first one that came up, in my opinion. This thing is hideous, by the way. Like, I just want to put that out there. It's not a beautiful-looking ship. But let me show y'all the launch. Here we go. This was the launch system that they had on board the USS Long Beach. And these actually are reloadable at sea. Problem is that they're not able to get out the volume of fire that a vertical launch cell can, but you can still reload these at sea. There's been a bit of a debate in the Navy recently as to whether they should try and bring back a system like this that has a lower rate of fire, but at the same time is replenishable at sea, meaning that as long as there were auxiliaries in the area with ammo on board, these ships can remain in the fight indefinitely and never have to leave to replenish at any sort of a facility like Guam or Honolulu or onto the west coast like San Diego or somewhere else. But with that, I hope that it kind of covers all of the bases that we can right now on that kind of a hypothetical conflict like that. But nevertheless, we have also been able to hear in other news that the North Koreans are now fully behind the Russians and once again sending more reinforcements again after Kim Jong-un got over his shock that an entire elite North Korean unit got wiped off the map by just a whole bunch of Ukrainian territorial defense forces. And a lot of people are wondering, will the U.S. be able to convince Kim otherwise about this kind of inaction? And a lot of people are believing that Kim is pretty much fully committed to the war. Others are saying that Kim can be convinced, and some are saying that it's a 50-50 chance. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So is the U.S. going to be able to convince Kim otherwise to not deploy more troops inside of Ukraine? So 73% said no. Kim is fully in with Russia now, while 12% said it's a 50-50 chance at this point, and 11% said yes, Kim can be convinced by the United States. And honestly, at this point, I would say the U.S. has very, very, very limited leverage over North Korea at this point. They really don't have much of anything, actually. And once again, North Korea is nuclear armed, and now they have an agreement with Russia to keep sending troops to the war. And in exchange, they're getting goods from Russia. So they're definitely in deep with Vladimir Putin at this point. This is much different than the situation we saw about 4 or 5 years ago when the current U.S. president walked across the North Korean border for the first time right into their territory. That was a very different time. And I don't think there's going to be much leverage at all by the current U.S. president over Kim at this point. In fact, he probably won't be able to talk to him even at all. He probably won't even accept the call. So I'm with the 72%. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to be with the 72% as well. North Korea is going to get a lot more out of Russian-North Korean relations than they ever would with American-North Korean relations. So they're pretty much dead set at this point in their support to the Russian Federation because goodwill is not feeding the North Korean people. Sacrificing thousands of North Koreans to Russia is what's feeding the North Korean people at this point and the North Korean war machine. So I would largely believe that the North Koreans wouldn't even pick up a call from the president at this point. Also, by the way, I've got to put out something that's a clarification. I'm going to have to eat my foot on this because crazily enough, I'm actually wrong about the vertical launch cell shortcoming. Still at this point, it probably is going to be an issue, but we were able to hear that the Navy, as of late October of just last year, which is maybe the reason why I didn't hear about it because it's not fleet-wide yet, and it looks like it's still in a testing phase, but they were able to conduct a vertical launch cell reloading at sea. And we can see that being done right here as the Navy holds its first tram test. Chris's mom was present on board the vessel, and they did run the tram. But beyond that, they actually were able to conduct a reloading at sea with the system. So it does appear that at the moment this isn't fleet-wide yet, at least from what I could see, but this tram system can be used by any vessel operating a vertical launch system with vertical launch cells, and they can be reloaded at this point by a Navy auxiliary. So this is actually big news because this now means that the shortcoming that we were seeing for the U.S. Navy, where they had to go back to Guam or Honolulu to be able to reload these systems, is now going to be a thing of the past probably within the next year or two, which would be just in time, crazily enough, by 2027. If this was fleet-wide by that point, it would literally be just in time for the earliest time frame windows where we would see that the Chinese actually would have an ability to invade Taiwan and forcibly take it over, meaning that we could be ready just in time navally to be able to deal with that kind of a fight. So that's actually pretty good to hear, and thank you everyone for clarifying that, because I actually had not heard about that a bit. It's fairly new. Like, this is something that's been around for years. It was just tested a couple of months ago, but a little bit crazy because I try and always keep up to date with the new systems that are being tested in the U.S. military, but this one completely passed me by. I didn't even hear about it at all, so I guess I just wasn't paying attention that day or something, but still, huge thanks to everyone who shared that, because this is making the situation in the Pacific look a lot better, at least in the future. But with that, it is now time for us to move on into Ukraine, and crazily enough, I didn't actually expect this. The Taiwan-China segment took an unbelievably long amount of time. I hope y'all enjoyed the amount of detail that I went into about all the concerns that the U.S. Navy has and all that sort of a deal and the strategic implications for the United States. But at the same time, it is now an hour and a half into the show, and we still have all of the Ukraine war news on the battlefield to cover, which was a lot today, mind you. So before we get into that, I do want to make sure that we can answer a couple of questions, and then we're going to move right on into the Ukraine war news and analysis as well. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right. So our first super chat of the night is going to go to Con LSA, who's of course a longtime channel legend and has always helped keep the channel running for ages now. And thank you very much, Con, for once again supporting the channel with a big $50 donation, and we appreciate that. Con says, as always, keep up the great work, guys.
Hey, thank you so much for the massive support, Con, and helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, a massive thanks to you, an incredible thanks to you, a real thanks, a long-lasting thanks for enjoying the good work. I hope you all have been enjoying the massive amount of analysis that I've gone into tonight. I see a lot of people actually saying that the analysis was really well done, and they really like it. So I'm glad to hear that. And I gotta thank you so much for the massive support, Con, as well, because support like yours helps us to keep this channel running, helps us to keep things moving, and also helps me to continue to be able to eat and drink enough coffee so that way I can get on here and just blast out analysis like that out of the blue. Folks like you make the entire thing possible, and I gotta thank you for being a part of that. And of course, long live the Lee Spring Army, and a huge thanks to you so much once again. Also, by the way, I want to make mention of this. Is BC Skyman here tonight, Matthew?
Yes, he is here. He's here.
Oh, like BC Skyman actually did see that clip of you on CNN, and I thought that was really well put. It was like the exact points that we put out. And he's saying what we're saying. And I was like, what's even better is that it was on a national news channel. So that was great, man. Like, great job on that, by the way. I thought you were putting out points very succinctly and incredibly well, really representing folks like us in the LSA wildly well. So a huge congratulations on that, and a great job for sure. But with that, we are on to the next one. A big thanks once again, Con, for that massive support.
Indeed. And also, unfortunately, I don't know what the hell's happened, but for some reason, ow, I just bit my bottom lip so bad just there, but oh my God, that hurt. But anyways, for some reason, my China video that I put out yesterday just is like taking off out of nowhere. Have you looking at the chart on that? Like, that thing is literally just shooting like straight up, like, it's crazy. I've never seen a video do that.
I have seen this before. I have actually seen something like this before on one of mine. That could go anywhere. It could go nowhere, or it could go up really, really fast. And
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that is crazy. I wonder what's causing that. But that's still great. Nevertheless, I'm not complaining. I mean, are you complaining? I'm not complaining. Shoot.
Man, I personally love to see it, man. I was like, what the hell? The video is just taken off out of nowhere. I thought it was dead already. Usually the videos like pretty much fall off after a day because it's pretty much dependent on the day's news. So I'm glad to see it as having a second life. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat, this one goes to Old Warrior, who's also another channel legend and throws in a very generous $50 donation. And thank you very much, Old Warrior, for the support. And at this point, I'm trying not to chew my gum again because, like, I'm in pain. But Old Warrior said, do you know if this agreement with Ukraine will rise to the level of a ratified treaty?
It most likely will, I believe, at this point, Old Warrior, because the mineral agreement pretty much is a treaty in its own right for the large part. So I have a feeling if the terms are the same ones that we saw on Twitter that were put out in that supposed draft, I have a feeling that we probably will see that this actually rises to a signed treaty. And once again, we do have to remember that the actual actions do speak louder than words. And while the president's been all over the place, sanctions were extended another year today. And if that agreement is the one that is signed, that means that Ukraine is going to be getting unlimited soup and salad in the form of military support for however long it goes on. So I hope that does address that fairly well, in my opinion, Old Warrior, because I do believe we may see this turn into an actual binding treaty in between the United States and Ukraine. And what's even better is that if those are the actual terms that were laid out and are going to be agreed on, it was actually very beneficial to Ukraine and the United States equally. So I would have to say that hopefully that is the one we see signed with the exact same terms. And so a big thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, I see BC Skyman telling us the tricks of the trade, and I know it's completely true. You did 30 minutes of an interview, just to let you know, BC Skyman said he did 30 minutes of an interview with CNN, and they only used 10 seconds of it. And that is the way mainstream news is. That's why I don't like it a lot, because they kind of like clip and choose whatever they want that really gets across their point the best. It's really not like as like focusing on analysis, because I will have to say this, as far as the words that they picked out of your 30-minute interview, the 10 seconds that they picked was very strategically picked, because both you and I know, BC Scam, and everyone else knows that CNN, just like Fox News and every other news channel, has their own kind of a political agenda, and you said something within within the little clip that they used that was very crucial to the kind of agenda that they were trying to point out, if you know what I mean. I'm not going to get too much into what you said, but I did hear it, and they wanted to make sure to use that specifically because it would help them and benefit them for the large part on the kind of agenda that they're trying to push. Same thing with Fox, and BC Scammon also said that he did an interview with Fox. If you said the exact same thing to Fox, I can promise you that your interview will not even air on Fox, because it's not going to be supporting and pushing the kind of agenda that they want or have. So they are just going to omit that one and go find one that largely agrees with what they're trying to put out. And that kind of stuff is just nasty to me, like how news actually runs like that. Because someone at CNN, mind you, that's getting paid about as much as we do for running this whole entire show, went through and listened to your 30-minute interview and cut it down to the 10 juiciest seconds that fit the quotas that some guy up at the top of CNN, an executive, put down on what they were wanting to put out as their general running agenda on that kind of a news topic. Some sort of a manager put that out there for someone, and they wanted to make sure that pushed it well. Because the honest thing is that CNN, as everyone knows, leans one political direction. And you said, I voted for one guy, but I don't like what he's doing. And they went, this is just gold. This really supports what we're saying, that nobody likes him. And that's what our viewers want to hear. So let's just clip out exactly 10 seconds of it to get that point across, so that way our audience is happy and living in their echo chamber. And it's like, that's not what news should be. That's not even news. That's more so like political editorialism. And I really hate to see how they did that, because when we lived in our hometown, a tornado hit it and destroyed a good part of it. And I was talking about it, and and I got interviewed, and it was like a 30-minute interview. And Matthew was like, don't do it. And I was like, might as well. Like, maybe people will find something interesting about it. They didn't use a single bit of mine. Instead, they used someone in the town that said, oh, the tornado was flying over. Oh, Lord. It's like, what? It's like, they just wanted like an overly zealous reaction. They didn't want anyone talking about it going, yeah, this is a terrible tragedy. I grew up here my whole life, know the town like the back of my hand.
For the tornado?
Yeah, remember for the tornado, that guy came over and was like asking me questions conversationally.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, and then he came over and and interviewed me, and and also it was so scummy how that guy went around it, because I was working in a volunteer crew that day to help clean up the town. Like, I wasn't there to try and get known or anything, or have my 15 minutes of fame on the news. And this guy walked up, and he didn't look like he was with the news crew. He wasn't holding a microphone or anything, and there was no camera nearby. And he was like, man, it's terrible what happened down here, man. I mean, this town was so nice to be hit by this. I was like, yeah, man, you're telling me it's terrible. That's why I came down here to volunteer. He's like, yeah, man. And we had a whole 5-minute conversation about the town, because I actually cared about it. And then he was like, oh, wait a minute, wait right here. And then he came back with a microphone and a camera, and then immediately put me into an interview. And then they didn't even use any of it, because I wasn't what that news channel was looking for. They were looking for some sort of a reaction that would get that news channel a little bit of traction on the internet, because everyone loves something like, ain't nobody got time for that. Like, everyone loves something like that on their news channel, because it goes viral and it gets their news channel a little bit of notoriety. But with me sitting there and just logically talking about the town, it wasn't what they were looking for, so they didn't use any of it. And that kind of stuff is just shady about news, like what they do and what they look for. And that's why we just try and go with straight facts or analysis, or just raw video clips to show exactly what's going on. And that's it. But still, I hope that gives my 2 cents on that, BC Scamming. Still, though, beyond that, I think that you sounded incredibly well and articulated in that. Like, no one could have asked for better if they were to ask someone who supported Ukraine what their position was. Still, with the 10 seconds that went out, you sounded like a very reasonable and level-headed person that was very intelligent on the subject, and came off very well. So even though CNN's CNN, just like Fox is, I still think you did a great job at it. But with that,
I agree, and also, BC, I'm glad you did the interview, because I'll be honest with you, us Southerners, we have a stigma on us for some reason, like we're not educated in world affairs. And obviously, me and Andrew are Southern. BC is Southern as well. And for some reason, the world views us as not up to date on world events. So I'm glad to hear that we're getting our voices out there for a change, and not just everybody else sitting back and being like, oh, those Southerners don't know anything. They're just down there in the South, and they're just the Southerners. I'm glad to hear that we're breaking that stereotype, because we get a bad stereotype down here in the South for that kind of stuff. So I'm glad our voices are getting out there for a change. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I would agree. Certainly so. And also, BC Scamming said the angle wasn't great either. I thought the angle was fine, honestly. I was like, oh, look, there he is. I was like, there's BC Scamming. There he is. I thought it was fine. But I would news is so dishonest. Like it really, like we have our own stories with it beyond that one alone, that where we've had experiences with news companies. Because not to say this out there, but when we were like, before Matthew and me even turned 10, we actually were on national news, I think on CNN for like 5 seconds. You remember that, Matthew? It was about a little kind of a flu, kind of a deal.
Oh yeah. I remember that.
Yeah, you remember that? We actually were on national TV for a little bit, and our parents asked for us not to be included, like any of the footage of like our house or anything, because they had an understanding at the time with the kind of position they were taking that there was going to be death threats and things, and people were probably going to figure out where we live. And instead, they showed our house on national TV, and then also showed me and Matthew. And then the death threats started coming in to our parents, and then they also started saying that they were going to kill us. Like at that age,
we were getting death threats. We were getting death threats from what was that, like 10 or 11 years old or something like that. And now we're 24 and still getting them.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like it is actually crazy. Like to think about it, man. This experience is nothing new to us. It's just that our parents really shielded us from what was actually happening, like the national fallout directed at them, like back when we were 9 and 10. So we didn't even know what was going on. We just went to school and had no clue. But then our teachers at school kind of knew a little bit, and like, you know, they'd be like, oh, you know, your parents are those parents that were on CNN. And we were like, yeah, like we didn't even really know, like at all. The only thing our parents showed us was the clip that they showed on national TV of us on the swing set, swinging, you know, on the swing set, and that was it. Like that's all we knew was on national TV. We didn't know any of the fallout or really what they were even talking about. But like to kind of let y'all know, it was actually like they were actually talking about the swine flu at the time, which was going around rampant in late 2008 and 2009, and withholding. You know what was crazy? What was crazy? Like this actually is something that a lot of people would not even think about now. Nobody stopped anything when swine flu came around. It was incredibly dangerous for children at the time. And so our parents were actually holding us out of school so that way we wouldn't get swine flu. And then that caused a whole outrage and an outroar and everything. And crazily enough, that apparently was ahead of its time for what would happen later. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're going to get right back into the news. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one goes to Purple Gerbil, the Mr. Gerbil, who puts in a $35 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Gerbil, for that support and also being a longtime channel legend and helping to keep the channel running. Hey! And they said, do you think if Russia forces Belarus into the war, would Ukraine annex Belarus and LSA forever?
And I gotta say, I think that probably wouldn't happen, because one thing that's important to remember nowadays is that taking over a country and administering territory costs money, and that might not really be necessary, worth the investment. Also, on top of that, there always will be partisan groups, pretty much little terrorist organizations that'll pop up to fight the occupation, and it just never really ends up being profitable for that government. They usually end up losing more money trying to administer that land than they ever get from actually taking it. So I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion. But I got to thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running day in and day out. And so with that, we are now on into the Ukraine war news. And we got a lot of it. Starting off in the Kurchatov area, we did get to see that there was some sort of a major explosion. We were told that one of them was a gas station explosion and the other one was an ammunition depot explosion. But check it out.
Да, это, блин, снаряды или патроны. Ух, ебать.
Oh, блядь, it's on fire. Did you see this?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, блин. Here's another clip of it.
I thought it was one of the Queen's Guards there for a minute.
Not quite by the Queen's Guard. Well, actually, it's a King's Guard now.
That's right, yeah.
Oh!
Oh!
Ух ты, ебать!
Oh, ебать!
Ебать, вот это было.
And then you got the high-vis guys up there. They're all in a group. They're like the Three Musketeers, but they call them the Three high-vis-keteers. Like, it's like... But anyways, here's the next clip.
Вот там заправка.
Dude, that happened right as that guy sneezed. He went, ooh, shit, then it blew up. Listen.
This is the big town event.
А я
here.
заснял, пацаны.
Скинешь мне.
Я отвечаю, заснял прямо взрывно.
That dude sneezes more powerful than that wolf on the Bad Piggies episode.
You mean the three little pigs? It wasn't the bad
Oh yeah,
piggies. Like,
yeah, the three little pigs.
bro,
I
those
don't know
pigs
what
were
the hell I'm
hard
talking
working. You dissing on them out of the blue. You're like, the three bad
little
piggies.
pig.
Man, those damn pigs got jobs. But man, here's the explosion from another angle.
Нихуя себе!
He's shocked.
Что там лежит нахуй?
He said what lies there. Well, Putin usually lies, but not in that area. And that's the end of that clip. And the last one is largely a corroboration of the first two. From what we understand, it largely looks to be a gas station fire, but some said that it may have been an ammo dump. But I'm still leaning towards gas station. It didn't seem to be an ammo dump. But moving on down to the Kursk front, we also got to see the Russians receiving an FPV drone for free from the Ukrainians. Check it out. He's just walking around. Uh-oh. We hear the sound of the FPV. He's trying to shoot it. Dude, was that guy just joking? Look at him. Dude, trank walk.
he's like walking forward but marching at the same time. It's like he doesn't even intend to move forward. He's just sort of like fumbling or something.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, man. Like, when I saw him, like, that song played in my head where it's like, I'm on my way from misery to happiness to me. Like,
look at his legs. Man, his legs are like noodles. Like, they're not even, like, moving right.
Dude, I think he was, like, almost, like, stammering over towards the cameraman here, like, towards the end. Look. Yeah, he was. He's like, oh, my God.
He's tiptoeing down.
Oh.
Oh my God.
Is the other guy still tiptoeing? Oh, no, he's not tiptoeing.
Man, he's running flat-footed now.
Moving on to our next clip, we also got to see the Ukrainian special forces targeting and destroying Russian vehicles within the area. Oh my lord, dude, that last clip was a trip. Like, honestly. And we see them just slamming Russian vehicles. Some destroyed already, and they're just making sure to double tap them. Others are getting destroyed right now. Oh, what's this? Is that a BMP? Well, it's no longer.
This thing's moving fast. Look at it go. Oh.
Dude, that guy in the last clip, man, in the end, when he was running like I run in dreams. Like, it wasn't really running. It was almost like speed walking, but he was still kind of running.
Man, he was doing the weeble wobble, that wobbly routine. Kind of like these guys right here.
Oh, right through the back windshield. Ugh, terrible, terrible, terrible. Many such cases. And the Ukrainians are just going ham here. I got to tell you, with how much ham the Ukrainians put on the Russians, you'd think the price of ham would be cheaper in this country. Oh, but nevertheless, it's expensive. Meat's expensive these days, folks. It costs a lot of money to get some meat. Crazily enough, Chris's mom gets it all day for free.
Oh, man. Oh, man, I won't make that joke. I won't take it any farther. I'll leave it there.
I mean, with the price of eggs in this country, you would think it'd be pretty hard to get your hands on a lot of them. But nevertheless, talking to Hot Dog Man is walking on eggshells. Plenty of them. That one didn't really land like the last one. Apparently, no
Oh,
reaction.
no. I was responding. I was responding to someone in the live chat, man. You know,
Man.
I have other duties to attend to out here.
But being a free laugh track is one of them, man. Like you're leaving me hanging.
A free laugh track. Man, this laugh track's not free,
dude. It's got to be like it's got to be like the jokes from the Big Bang show, where like the jokes are just lame, where they're like. Script it, and then you hear you know, something like that for like 30 seconds after a lame joke. But anyways, moving on from that, we did get to see a Ukrainian BTR-7 in a training mission. I actually think that's a BTR-70. I've never heard of a BTR-7, but still need to see it. Moving on from that into our next clip, we also got to see the Tofu Dreg drone. The Ukrainians were conducting an assault in their Kazakh 2 near to Pokrovsk. I put this in the location unknowns just so that we can make sure to differentiate it, but nevertheless, here's the clip. They're driving on their way. Oh, and what's that? Good tidings. It's a present from above. It's a Russian FPV, and it didn't blow up. It's on the front hood.
Oh, yeah, we got a free FPV. Look,
dude, this guy's whole reaction to a drone almost blowing the windshields out was, oh my god! Like, dude, that's all he did. You can't. He's like, yeah, but let's watch that again. Dude, it's like a deer hitting the front of the car. Dude, this guy literally went egads. Like after watching a drone almost blow up on him. And now it's just sitting there. We see some other pieces of it over there. We now see it here. You can actually see the RPG head still on it. It didn't detonate for some reason when it hit the Kazakh, so it's a dud.
Прилетіло пацанам.
That's fantastic. Take it to the pawn shop and sell it.
Dude, take it to Pawn Stars. They'd be like, best I can do is like 50 cents. Yeah, Pawn Stars, you know, like the TV show. You remember?
Oh, you're talking about that reality show that's on like I can't remember the channel, but yeah, I know what you're talking about. At first, when you said that, I was like, wait a minute, what? I was like, what are you talking about? I didn't actually realize until this very moment what that actually sounded like until you just said it like that.
Oh, well, I mean, it's like a famous American reality TV show. I mean, how else did it sound?
I mean, I didn't realize it was like a play on the word there for a second. Because when you said it, it sounded like something else. But I was like, oh, that's what they meant the whole time. Like, that's flown over my head for years, actually.
Wait a minute. Are you saying that the name of the show has been a play on words this entire time?
Yeah, are you being sarcastic or are you?
No. I
just
realized that. I just realized that right now.
Yeah, Pawn Stars. Like, I've never understood
God,
that.
I never got it until right now. Like, dude, I've known about that show since we were like little, and now I'm just getting it. I just got it. Like, okay, so we're just gonna forget about that. Like, I'm sorry, everyone. Now y'all realize how stupid I am outside of like analysis of war stuff. Because I just realized that was a play on words the entire time, and I never even understood it. But anyways, moving on from that, so that we would just completely gloss over the fact that I just realized that was a play on words. It's time for us to move on into Roadniks, because we have a segment of it today, and it's a fun one.
Oh my God, man. What do these guys weigh? Like 500 tons? That axle's screaming for help.
I'm tired, boss. Like, that thing's dying back there. And also, I like the subwoofer that they have on top of the UAZ.
Yeah, is that a subwoofer? Is it really?
I think, man. Dude, they go up into the battle for the Ukrainians like, wait a minute, do you hear that? It's like the nightclub kind of a thing. It's like, blit, they're on the way. But moving on into the next clip, we also got to see another one. This is a completely different one, by the way, from another angle. It has a cope cage on the front of it. So that way when the FPV blows up, you only get minced, not sliced. And moving on into the next picture, we also got to see this. Not that good. Also, the axle's already spent on the back of this one already, and there's a lot of stuff back there. So it's almost breaking at this point. But pretty atrocious, I must say. It's a very interesting one.
Bliat. And it was purple. That's the real atrocity, is it was purple before they actually, covered it with dirt. And also, the rims. They had a rim on the back, but not a rim on the front. It's kind of odd.
Yes. Also, Matthew, did someone just try and insinuate that you or me is a guest on the show?
Yeah, they were actually talking about you because you were the one talking about France the whole time. So I was like, they said a co-host guest. I'm like, no, I'm like, neither one of us are guests. We're actually like permanent co-hosts. So, it is what it is. But
I've never heard myself called a guest on my own show. I've never felt more welcoming at home, though, because whoever actually is running the show, they made me pretty much run the whole damn thing. I mean, like, this is the most welcoming a guest could ever be. I mean, really, like, crazy. But moving on from that, I am honored to be y'all's guest for tonight, our guest speaker for the night, the Enforcer. It's not like the whole show is called the Enforcer or anything like that. So I'm just a guest here. Dude, now I can say, man, when people are like, hey, dude, I hate this freaking show, I can say, look, I'm just a guest here. I'm not here permanently. Like, now I can actually use that as an excuse.
I just work here, sir. I'm just a worker, sir.
I'm just a gardener, huh? Like, I'm not even on here full time. But moving on from that, oh my God.
Now this is abominable. But what's even worse is that man standing at the back opposing like this. That's even worse. Like, knock that off right now, buddy.
Dude, he's grabbing something under the bulletproof vest, and I don't think it's his belt.
That man's wilding out.
Dude, this is the worst modification of a buhanka I've ever seen, but it gets worse.
Oh, and that's standard right there.
Actually, that's just Bessemer right there. I mean, that's not even anything special. You can just see that down in Bessemer, Alabama, any day of the week.
Jeez.
Like, dude, am I lying or am I right? Like that's literally what you would see down in Bessemer on any given day.
This is called a hoopty, by the way. That's what that's called.
I didn't even know. They's tired. You tired, man? No, they's tired like flies, man. They tired. But moving on from that, we also got to see this. It's rough, but it's not the worst thing we've ever seen. And we. Oh
my God! What the hell what is that hanging underneath? Is that the leash? Why is that leash spring so long?
I don't think that's a leaf spring, dude. I think that's one of, like, the main struts of the chassis, like, just hanging down like that.
Man, so is that, like, flexible Bing-Shaling drive axle or, like, the drive shaft or something? That thing's, like, all sagging and stuff. I don't know what the hell that would even be, to be honest.
Dude, is the tire deflated on the back, like, axle? It looks like it.
I think those tires might be airless because it doesn't even look – it looks oval. It doesn't even look round.
This one is the worst, actually, that I've seen so far. From this angle, this is terrible. It's like a scrap car, like legitimately like a Kentucky Derby kind of a car right here. But moving on from that,
it looks like something like a crack dealer would drive around or something like that, like a meth dealer or something. Like they drive around, they're all junked out like that. Just like, oh man, it's tough.
Did someone call? This is my car, and it's the one I drive to D.C. after I get a desk and a chair and a trip to D.C. and high-definition cameras and a mobile reporting station and also a van and a whole bunch of other things. Aw, man. It's like, did he even successfully fundraise for a desk and a chair and a trip to D.C.? Now he's already moved on to, like, professional cameras. So he didn't even succeed on the first one.
I'm not even sure. Some people are also saying that's an exhaust under this car. I'll be honest with you. I've worked on a couple of cars to my detriment, but I've never seen an exhaust flexible like that. So maybe it's an exhaust, but I've never seen one bend like that. Why would it be hanging down like that? You've lost all your ground clearance at that point.
I gotta tell you.
Also, the Russians are big into straight piping these things. Like they just like cut the whole exhaust off at the headers and let it rumble, basically, right in their face. So I don't know.
I gotta tell you, some people, Matty, they sit there and they say that America is weak or moving from plastic straws to paper straws. And I gotta tell you, Russia's really strong. They said, let's make our car exhaust like bendy straws. We'll make them to where they flex under the car for no reason so that we can hit them on a rock and have all that carbon monoxide straight into the driver's seat, free of charge. Absolutely incredible. We love to see it. Absolutely wonderful. But moving on into our next clip, we have another great automobile, another great one. This, oh my God, what is up with the front tire? Oh my God.
that's the nastiest tire I've ever seen in my life. I don't know what to make of that.
They did these tires dirty. I've never seen a tire like this. The Michelin man, he cried very badly, saying this absolutely terribly. You haven't seen a tire like this. You haven't seen rubber in this bad a shape ever since Egg said. But anyways, moving on from that, and out of that little clip right there, fairly wild to see. It's now time for us to move on into the Russian casualty report, because we were able to see some pretty interesting losses today.
They got one Bobcat skid steer. It looks like it's staying kind of low. I don't know why, but it seems like we were on a roll there for a while, but now it's down to hardly anything. But the other categories are staying nice and juicy, like a rare filet mignon steak or like an A5 Wagyu straight from Japan. But Enforcer, tell us more.
And it looks like the numbers were good today. Good today indeed. Miss Decent, keeper of the record, stated that troops are lower lately. They're more low because they've drank too much, so they're like stooping a little bit lower. But others are still strong in the numbers. 69, nice, artillery systems is the 6th highest, tied with 2 other days. 141 drones is the 12th highest daily loss, tied with January 22nd of 2025. And 140 supply trucks is the 15th highest loss of the war. But now, it's time for us to get into the actual numbers. 1,150 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 13 APCs, 140 supply trucks, 8 main battle tanks, 69 artillery pieces, 141 drones, 1 anti-aircraft warfare system, and 1 Bobcat skid steer. All in all, the numbers were juice, and we like to see them. Moving on from that and on up into the northern Kharkiv area, we were able to see the Ukrainians knocking out some drones. We've seen clips like these a million times over, but who can ever resist watching more of them?
You know, it always gets me, like, I just realized this with these clips. They're smashing those drones hard.
Man, I heard they get a textbook and they smash. Like you said, you remember that?
Yes, I remember that. That was. I don't even know why they brought in like some. But by the way, what we're referring to is back in high school when we were in JRTC. For some reason, they thought it'd be a good idea to bring in an STD educator. An expert that is to JRTC to educate the JRTC on that. Honestly, probably not a bad idea, but anyways, they asked some kid, what was the question even? I can't remember what the hell the question was.
They said, how did they test for HIV? And then that kid said, I like for men, by the way, mind you, that's what the question was. So he said, I heard that in my school, to test for that they get a textbook and they smash. And then the person said, and what do you mean by that? And they're like, they smashed their weenus. Get your hands off my weenus! And then they were like, that is absolutely like unabashedly wrong. Like I was like, why the hell would this kid ever even think that's right? It's like, yeah, let's smash your crotch with this heavy textbook, and now tell us whether you're sick with it or not. It's like, what?
I remember when he said it, everybody just went unilaterally, like, well, not unilateral. Everybody went all at once. He said, oh, everybody all at once just did that. Like, oh my God. Like, what the hell is he talking about?
Oh my Lord. Dude, I know, like, remember that kid was only there for like that year. He was like Trevor from GTA in Living Form, but in high school still. And then he moved on to some other school because I think, what happened to him, man? Like, he did something questionable and then he got moved on somewhere else. I forgot what the questionable thing he did was.
I didn't know the kid that well, so I don't know, but he did something.
He did something, and he was gone by the next year. I think he was gone before the first year was even over. But anyways, we can still see them taking down more drones and putting up more text. It's like a silent film, really. And that's the end of that clip. And moving on from that and a little bit on down towards Seversk, we actually got to see a Ukrainian tank firing on Russian forces down here today with raw sound. This is rare in the war, mind you. A little pop shot right there. Dang, man. Like, oh my Lord.
I was like desperately like trying to reach the mute button before I just did that. I couldn't even reach it.
Bro, they're about to pop off a shot. There it goes. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. That still wasn't as loud as your sneeze, crazily enough. But they are popping off some shots. It's so nice just to hear the rumbling of the engine and the sound of HE being blasted in Russian positions, point blank. Who can hate this? Like, no one.
This is much better than that classic rave music being played.
It's like, I'm tired of this so much. And that's the end of that clip. One hell of a clip, that's for sure. Moving on from that and down towards Bakhmut, we also got to see the Russians getting blown away down here by a Ukrainian drone from the Phoenix unit. And they are just blasting these people. And someone said, oh, this war is shooting at nothing. Haven't you figured that out? Man, I tell you, the casualty reports are saying something entirely different to that. I'd hate to tell you that one. Like, oh, man, you know, like, I've seen a lot of things getting blasted at, and it certainly wasn't nothing. Sometimes little chunky pieces come flying off of them, you know? Like, that's certainly not nothing. I mean, hell, it looks like a Walmart deli in here with the amount of meats flying around. But anyways, when you see them hitting a little Russian supply truck right there and cooking her up quite nice. Cooking it up Gary's way. Oh, it looks like they're going for another one. A KAMAZ 535-01 with trailer. Down with KAMAZ. And hitting a Ural. Oh, please, I insist. Hit it again. A second time. Right in the fuel tank. Dazzler X said, armchair commanders. Well, hell, I tell you,
armchair commanders. I don't even have armchair. Like I don't have arms in my chair.
It's an armless chair. Correct yourself. Like, please. We are chair commanders. Just like not armchair commanders. That's too expensive. But moving on from that, we did get to see some Russian drone operators getting hit by the 28th Mechanized Brigade in Toretsk.
No offense or anything, but have you ever been checked for Toretsk?
Oh, and there was a Russian drone operator, and here they go. They're now leaving. Oh, a little fire started. Someone called the fire department. Oh, wait a minute. The Russians ran them away, so it looks like there's going to be no one putting out that fire.
I'm just saying, but these buildings right here are made out of the finest communist tiles that you've probably ever seen in your life. Look at those communist tiles. Those are our tiles.
the greatest prefab blitz. Like it was, how long are we supposed to build these buildings to last? 20 years. 50 years later, every single one of them is still standing. It's like honestly, I don't know if that's supposed to be good for Soviet prefab buildings or bad that no one ever had the money to replace them. Whoa.
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 They just blew the hole in the wall.
Look at that boiler.
Whoa.
I mean, might be the next chesty pooler, but whoa. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also get to see some close combat here. A Russian ended up surrendering in the middle of this close combat, mind you. Sadly, can't play the clip. I do know that this one has music in it. Well, the audio. I can't play the audio. It has music in it, but we can play the clip. We see him checking the place out. Oh, and the firefight begins. He's laying down that heat. He's now getting up and backing off into this basement. And we now see them all laying down some fire onto that position. And we now see him reloading.
Oh my God, I just realized that, the guy, look at that boiler. That guy went on a rampage against one of the people that links up with Hot Dog Man. Like, I didn't even realize that until today, and I just went and looked right now. He had published, looked like one or maybe two videos bashing a particular guy that Hot Dog Man is quite fond of, actually. I didn't know that.
Hold up, let me go see that.
Yeah, put out two of them, actually. Oh, actually, make that, it might be three, actually. But damn, man, this guy was going crazy on him.
Whoa. Look at that content farm. Bro, 3 videos? Jeez.
I didn't realize how, universally bad that backfired on that guy. And we're not going to get too deep into it. We're not trying to start drama or anything like that. We're staying clear of that these days. But, that guy got flamed, universally for that. And this guy has no business flaming anybody, honestly. He's just, sort of a character, but, I was putting it lightly.
He's a character, the Catherine.
Not a good character, honestly.
Man, he's one of those people who did something that millions of others do, but he's a special princess. It's like, come on, man. It's like I know plenty of people in the same service that he was in, and they're fine people who aren't stuck up like that. Like, someone's got an ego issue when they sit there and do something, and then they got to make their entire life, I did it, and no one can do it as good as me. It's like, come on, man.
Man, I tell you.
Whoa, look at that. I'm going to make a video on you next. It's like, okay. It's like, it won't be the first time we've been under fire, so it's like, I'm fine with it.
Whoa. Oh, look at that roast. Whoa.
Look at that wheelbarrow. Whoa. We see him rolling them on out. And the clip ends there. But they were able to clear out another position and continue to push forward in Toretsk. Moving on from that and down towards the area of Selidove, we got to see that everyone down here got hit. And we're going to be muting that, sadly, but we can see them riding around on their Chinese ATVs. Just taking a little journey, almost getting into a head-on collision there. We now see something on fire up ahead. I wonder what it is. It's a mystery. Now they're going off-road for some reason. Just have no understanding why, with the Baofeng radio sitting dead center of the ATV. And they're racing by, and it looks like a BMP that got obliterated earlier. We now see them running away from the golf cart here. Unsawed, nothing's happening. What's going on? Oh, well, now they're on the trip again, and oh man, what's going on up the street? Everyone's running. Oh
my God. It's going down up in the street.
Dude, that guy's running like a scalded dog. Jeez,
Man,
he's going.
He is bucking it. Like, he won't even stop. He's just taking off.
Dude, that guy ran away from that desert cross. Bro, this is what he was. The other guy, say, oh my God, he's like, oh my God, are you all right? So he
Man, there he goes. I've never seen anybody run quite like at an angle like that. That guy was leaned forward at like a nice incline.
Like a 30-degree forward angle. That, wait a minute, hold up.
Oh, it's sparking.
Oh, wait a minute. Did it drop an incendiary on him? It actually looks like it might have survived. But they are, my God, dude, I've never seen one of these go this fast. Oh, my God.
Look at him.
Oh, wait a minute. He's pulling over now. Oh, and he's dismounting. They're making a run for it.
That guy was pushing that Bing Saline cart to the limit.
That's like they're doing it again. Oh my God, this looks ridiculous. Dude, this is literally like a golf cart going like 60. Oh, and there they go. They're going off-road up there, and they're going off-road back here too. Oh, and they're making a run for it. Oh, and it got hit. Oh, my Lord. It actually got hit. Goodness. Dude, these things have a very short lifespan, man. They're practically obliterated once they get out there. But moving on from that and into our next clip from Pokrovsk, we also got to see them hitting some Russian forces with the thing about thingamajig. So here we go. Oh, my Lord. They're getting them.
That's the weirdest reticle I've ever seen on one of these, but I guess it works. Oh, 10. A lucky 10.
Man, I'm telling you what. Carrie said, you definitely don't know anything about negotiations. Well, you, Carrie, certainly don't have an air fryer. Matthew, nuke that person. Oh, there they go. Oh, man. Goodness.
You know nothing about negotiations.
It's like, I guess
you know why? Because you don't agree with my point.
Because you don't like my guy, or you don't think like me, so clearly you must know nothing about it.
But more accurately wording your statement, it would be, I strongly disagree with your perspective, and you may have your own perspective, but I say piss on it.
Man, honestly, that would be more accurate. We can also see the Russians evacuating destroyed anti-air systems that were knocked out by the Ukrainians within the southern region, practically all of them being Bukes or variants of the Buke. But moving on from that clip and into our next one down in the Kherson area, we were also able to see 1,129th Anti-Aircraft Missile Regiment destroy another Russian drone.
Someone said, who is the hot dog man? He's someone who shalln't be named, but there's a very valid clue here. He did work at a hot dog stand. That's why he has the name Hot Dog Man. And he does grift for chairs. He grifts for vacations. He grifts for highly advanced camera equipment. It's all part of the game for a hot dog seller to ramp up their life XP and build up a nice cabinet full of equipment that will never be useful to them because they have a failing channel.
And with that, we also got to see this Russian maritime patrol today. They're whipping out the Catalinas from World War II to go on the maritime patrols.
This looks AI created. It's so bad.
That's legitimately a maritime patrol aircraft of the Russian Navy. I'm not even kidding. But they're hideous. I think it's some sort of it's a Beriev 12. The original one was the Beriev 6, but then they eventually upgraded to the Beriev 12, which are these, and they're just ugly. I hate them so much. Look at that. I mean, these things are just the worst.
It's awful. It looks like that spooky airplane out of that Scooby-Doo episode when the ghoul was running around going, yeah, it's like that one.
Dude. Well, this thing actually was pretty much like a predecessor. Well, it was like a successor to the Beriev 6, which was used in World War II, mind you.
Interesting. Yeah, it just sucks.
Actually, sorry, it wasn't used in World War II. Right after World War II. And it was retired in the late 60s. But these things are terrible. By the way, this is a Ching 6. The BE-6 conversion for the Chinese. But still same aircraft. Still same shitty design. But moving on from that and moving on from that clip of that hideous thing, it's now time for us to go up to Kyiv and tell y'all that there was no speech today because Zelensky was landing at Andrews Air Force Base when the speech was supposed to be made, so he wasn't able to make one. So with that, it's now time for us to move right on into that second segment of the stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. And boy, howdy, what a segment it'll be. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
Oh boy, it's now time for the final question segment of the night. And I see a lot of people actually knew the exact Scooby-Doo episode we were referencing just then. Honestly, I will say this. This is a controversial opinion, or actually it may not be. I don't know. The old cartoons are where it's at. The new cartoons honestly suck. Like, I don't really care for any new cartoons. Obviously, I don't watch them anymore. I'm much older than, the age bracket to watch a cartoon. But the old ones are just leaps and bounds better than the new ones. Johnny Quest was good. Scooby-Doo, the original series, was good. Let's see here. The Flintstones was good. All the old ones, all the Hanna-Barbera cartoons, those will never be topped. And also the old Disney cartoons too, with a few exceptions, were all really good. I got to say, I just love them, me personally. But Enforcer, what do you think? You like that new stuff or you like that old stuff?
Man, I personally got to say, I love the new stuff that's coming out, like Shrek 5. Like, I saw that today, and I was so excited for Shrek 5. Look at the redesigns. They're just perfect. I'm just kidding. These are hideous, by the way. I hate these. Like, I don't know what they're doing with this. Did you see the trailer for this, Matthew? Because I saw it on Twitter today when I was trying to put together the news, and I was like, this is the worst cash grab I've ever seen. Like, no joke.
Yeah, honestly, man, I don't even understand. Like, I just don't understand why I don't even know how to like really place it or something. These cartoons just aren't my thing. I think they're getting way too like caught up on like the actual visuals or something and the animation than they are actually like whether or not the story's any good or not.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, this is not going to be it. I can already tell you, especially with how the trailer looked and what it was, it's not going to be a good movie at all. I think a lot of people are going to end up hating it, because apparently it's pretty much already complete, because it's only supposed to be coming out towards the latter end of this year, which means that they're in the final parts of production and development and editing and all that sort of a deal. So it will be out come around time, so there's really no way to change any of that. It's going to be terrible. They're going to hate that.
Oh. Let's see here. I see people saying Tom and Jerry. Tom and Jerry was good. Looney Tunes was good. Let's see. The Jetsons was another one. They used to have all those cartoons on a channel called Boomerang that I literally watched when I was like young and in elementary school, like literally every morning and every night. I didn't care for Jabba Jaw. That one person that said that. I didn't really watch. Yeah, I didn't really watch that. I saw the commercials. Also, that Magilla Gorilla one. I never watched that either. I saw it on commercials though. But yeah, the old ones are really just really cool. Like the old ones, like really good cartoons. Let's see. Also, Andrew Barbaro. We're going to address the super chat right now, by the way, just on the topic. Andrew Barbaro put in a 20. Thank you, by the way, for that support, Andrew. Appreciate it. And Andrew said Roadrunner, Tom and Jerry. Roadrunner was good. I watched Tom and Jerry a hell of a lot more than Roadrunner, though. I thought Tom and Jerry was a really good one. It was just kind of brainless, but it was like good at the same time. But Enforcer, what say you?
Dude, Tom and Jerry was real because if Tom did too much stupid stuff, you would hear, Thomas, what the hell are you doing? And then like someone just out of the blue would come down there and start beating the hell out of him. I was like, man, this is respectable. I like it. Honestly, Tom and Jerry was goated. Like I thought Tom and Jerry was great. Out of the Flintstones and the Jetsons, I actually like the Flintstones better. I don't know. I just felt like the Flintstones was just better all around. Like the Jetsons and the Flintstones were like practically the same show, just in different eras. But for some reason, I like the Flintstones better. I can't really explain it beyond that. But those were some good shows. And then what else? What else was? One thing I liked, Matthew, was that El Kabong thing that would come on in like the commercial breaks. You remember that? Like
I remember it, but I don't really visualize it for some reason. But I remember hearing it.
Yeah, you hear that dung 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 dung, and there was like the train, and he'd hit it with a guitar, and like the guy would go flying or something. Like for some reason I always
Sam. Is that what you're talking about?
No. It was like a little short that came on in the commercial breaks. It was like less than a minute long. It was like a little short thing. But I like seeing that for some reason, just because it like became recognizable in those little commercial breaks. Not that it was good or anything. It was like literally like a 1 minute filler kind of a thing, but it wasn't bad.
Oh, the Pink Panther was another good one.
Yeah.
Good one. I almost forgot all about that one until someone mentioned it. That Pink Panther and the little fellow that was always like messing, or the Pink Panther was always messing with like the little French fellow or whatever. I like that one. I watched that one all the time too.
Yogi Bear.
Yeah, I remember that too. I didn't watch that one that much, but I did watch it some.
Yogi Bear was pretty good in my opinion. I like Yogi Bear. Let's see. I'm seeing some people bringing up all kinds of things. Ninja Turtles. I never got to watch that one. Let's see here. X-Men, never got to watch that one either. Quick Draw McGraw, I think that was what it was, like the little short thing that I was talking about, Scott. I think you got that. But let's see. Fred Flintstone was a redneck. Hey, how dare you? Like, how dare that man worked in a mine? Well, actually, he was a redneck when you think about it, man, because he was working in like a quarry. But, hey, don't you dare! Like, just beyond that, I liked the Flintstones because they had like relatable jokes in them. Like, for some reason, the Jetsons jokes just didn't land to me. Like, the Flintstones jokes did when I was a kid. I was like, that's funny. But let's see here. So many of y'all are naming out cartoons that I've never watched, like, crazily enough. Mr. Magoo, I actually never watched that one. Johnny Bravo, yeah, I never saw that one, actually. Like, I know what it is, never actually saw it, and I know what the character is, too. Never saw that one, though. Speed Racer, never saw that one. So many shows that y'all are bringing up, and I've never heard of them. Like, literally ever. Like, our selection of shows that we watched growing up was limited. And then when I was really little, I was huge into Thomas the Tank Engine. Like, that was like my thing. Like, Thomas the Train. Probably the reason why even to this day I'm still huge into trains was probably because of that show. But I don't know. Like I'm not really into it now because like they completely destroyed the IP. I don't know if you've seen what they've done to it recently, Matthew, but it's not even like trains anymore, like at all. It's just like it's like CGI generated stuff. And anyways, I wouldn't watch it because I've grown up at this point. But still, looking back at it and having the nostalgia of hearing like the George Carlin narrated episodes with like the little model trains, and then seeing that they've turned it now into something that isn't even really about trains at all, and it's like CGI generated. I'm like, that's just lame. Like, way to go to kill the whole IP right there.
Yeah, honestly, I think when they did the hand drawing of the cartoons, that like forced them to put a little bit more thought into it or something. When you just have computer generated everything, it cheapens the look of it, and also they get way too focused on trying to up the I guess you could say the visual value of it than the actual storyline itself. Like, honestly, the storylines in like old cartoons weren't like, super deep or anything, but at least they had like just a general like. They were easy to listen to, I guess was the way to put it. These new ones are way too edgy and stuff like that. It's like they're trying to push the envelope or something with them. It's like, no, people don't want that in these like mindless cartoons. They just want a good story, and that's it.
Dude, I liked the one episode there where let's see, Porky Pig was like hammering and he hit his finger with the hammer and he went son of a gun. I bet you thought I was gonna say son of a bitch, didn't you? like that one was hilarious. It's like, dude, that was top of the line right there. But anyways, I hope we addressed that the best we can. I could talk a lot about the shows that we watched, but we really didn't watch a lot of shows, and we really didn't we didn't really see much of anything. Like, loads of y'all are bringing up things I've never even heard about. One thing that I know, though, there was this movie that our mom really loved when we were kids that she would watch with us, and it was that movie, Matthew, with a polar bear in it that would get the armor, and I forgot what the movie was called. You know the one I'm talking about, where they would fly around on the balloon? They had the polar bear with them.
I don't remember.
It was like
that.
the Golden Compass is what it was called. Now, do you remember it?
Not really, no.
Okay, well, there was that movie. Our mom loved to watch that with us. And then let's see, there was one more. Escape to Narnia. I think we watched that one when we were like really little. But those were like the only movies I could remember from being a kid, like watching like full movies. I think those were like the only two. Beyond that, though, we were like either just playing or doing something else. And then finally, like when I had turned 12, computers came along into my life. So then I moved into playing video games like Napoleon Total War and stuff like that. Anyways, enough of that. We got loads of questions to address and very little time, so I want to make sure that we can get into them. So what do we got, Matthew? What do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first live chat, the final segment, this one goes to none other than BC Skyman, who put in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, BC, for throwing in that support. And once again, helping to keep the channel running. And BC, he actually wasn't able to put in the super chat for some reason. I think YouTube was having a glitch. But he was basically going to tell everybody in the super chat. He said, if you're looking for the CNN clip, because a lot of people were asking for it, it's on BC's channel, by the way. So you should be able to click on his name and then go to his channel to actually see that. And also, I recommend taking a look at it or yourself when you go take a look at it on his channel, because I must say, it was a very good piece, I would say. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to agree. It's a very good piece. And if anyone wants to actually see what BC Skyman said, go over to BC Skyman's YouTube channel because it is there. It was a very interesting. I think he put it very succinctly. I think a lot of people could agree with the kind of sentiments and statements that he made. And also a huge thanks to you once again for support BC Skyman and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible. And we wouldn't be able to say pretty much the exact same things here on this show. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bruce Clunch, in parentheses, Gimpy, who puts in a $50 donation. And thank you very much, Bruce, for that support and helping to keep the channel running as well. And Bruce said, take one from the chat in LSA.
And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for enjoying this channel and wanting to help it to keep on running. And we will make sure to get one from the chat in your honor. But still, a huge thanks to you so much once again for the support. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to David Koger, who says, does Taiwan have any rare minerals?
Taiwan? I don't really know, actually. Usually, from what I would understand, across the board, islands in the Pacific near to the coast, like Japan and Taiwan, I don't really think they have a lot of rare metals or rare earths in Taiwan. Taiwan has rare earth metals in its rivers and uses them in its semiconductor industry. However, and this is the AI overview, by the way, so it could be wrong. However, Taiwan is not a major producer of rare earth metals and relies heavily on China for them. But beyond that, it doesn't appear that they have a large amount of them or really are able to extract them much. And once again, they're probably not able to extract them because if all of the veins are within their nation's rivers, they really can extract them because they could start to pollute the drinking water for most of the country. And then that could end up being a serious concern, even more so than the ability to actually make themselves completely self-reliant on their own rare metals. So it really doesn't appear that it's the same case there as it is for Ukraine. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat well. And thank you so much once again, Gimpy, for the support and helping this channel keep on running and sponsoring that live chat question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Live Laugh Toaster Bath, who puts in a $31 donation. And thank you very much as well, Live Laugh Toaster, for that support. They said, good evening, Enforcers, and good evening to you. They said, thanks as always for the great content, and please take one from the chat and LSA.
And thank you so much for enjoying our well-researched and well-put-out content. We try our best to make sure that everyone is enjoying this every single night. Now, I'd have to say, I hope we met the mark tonight. I know that Matthew's video from yesterday really hit the mark because it's still growing. It's really shocking, honestly. Still growing there.
It's shocking.
It's shocking because, they usually don't grow after the first day, ever. I mean, it's fairly rare.
True.
I've only seen that like a handful of other times. It's one of the only times I've ever seen it. But nevertheless, I do thank you so much for the support and the kind words and enjoying that content greatly. And you know something, folks, I want to do on air because I'm just thinking about it really quickly. I'm playing this game called Kingdom Come Deliverance. Matthew might get tired of hearing that at this point because I probably brought that up a couple of times in air. But it's just so good. Like, I highly recommend that y'all go get it. But beyond that, something I was interested in is that this town Kutnaora, also called Kutenberg in the game. It exists in real life like it does in the game. But one thing that I'm even more interested in, to be entirely honest with y'all, is this little town of Sukdol or Sukdol. I'm not really sure how it's pronounced. Oh man, did someone call? But there's a castle in the game, and it doesn't appear that there's a castle here in real life. So I guess that one was reduced to ruin and then eventually just completely razed. Because I was wanting to see if I could find it. Because this road, Matthew, like this highway here, right here, is in the game. Like, you can actually travel all the way from this town, that I'm not going to say again because you're going to laugh at it, all the way to Kutenberg, and it's actually in the game, like the whole thing. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, actually.
Yeah,
the town of Sukdol.
Man, Sukdol or Sukdol. Anyways, y'all want to take a look at Kutnaora? I mean, it's kind of a cool town. Like, they have the coin minting museum in here. Look at this. Like, look at this. Like, it's a coin minting museum. They mint coins. Yeah, well, they used to mint coins in here. Not anymore.
Like somewhere where they'd hold a military tribunal or something in this room.
Nonsense! He's a rabble rouser and a vagrant, and he is to be shot. Something like that. Like, that's what you would hear in here. But still, it's a really cool place. Like, I actually want to go see this place in real life one day, because it would be interesting to see, especially considering that I played the video game that this is based on. And the video game makes it seem incredibly cool, like really, really cool. So also, by the way, Sub the Gator got Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 because of me. Hopefully, they started to pay me a referral fee. Warhorse Studio does, because I think I'm really sponsoring like their game for free at this point. But it's a really, really cool game. Cannot recommend it enough, because I remember back in the day when I heard of Kingdom Come Deliverance, the first game, it was still being developed, and it was a giant, I think it was a, let's see, what in the world? It's not the GoFundMe thing, Matthew. It's the other one, Kickstart. It was a Kickstart project. And I remember playing the closed beta for it, where it was literally just Talmberg on the first map and nothing else. And I was just blown away with it then already. I was like, wow, this is so cool. And then the first game came out, and I was just blown away by it. It was such a cool game. And it did incredibly well. I think it became a game of the year that year. Then they immediately got to work with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. And now they're saying that there's going to be even a new one coming out. I'm not really sure if it's Kingdom Come Deliverance 3 or if it's just going to be a totally different thing, because I kind of think the Kingdom Come Deliverance story is done with at this point with this story. That was in this game, but still, it was a really, really cool one, and I was just like a huge, huge fan of it. But anyways, with that, I'm not going to bore you all too long with talking about a video game that I'm playing in my free time at this point. But anyways, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for supporting and enjoying this content. Matthew, did they want a live chat question?
Let's see. Yes, they did. So we'll grab one right now. And this live chat question goes to Susan Lowell, who said, speculation, if Russia won Ukraine, would Russia attack Turkey or Poland first?
They probably wouldn't go for Turkey ever, because it's not really a part of Russian imperial ambitions. They probably would go for the Baltic states or Poland next. That probably would be the next thing for them on their list. So with that, I hope that does address that live chat well, and thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and this one goes to Marius Noor 78, who puts in a $25 donation. And thank you very much, Marius, as well, for supporting the channel and helping to keep it running. And he said, I think someone who knows foreign policy just shook the president. Wake up, or all will unravel with the EU and Ukraine. And honestly, I think that person was Macron, actually. I think that might have been the guy who came along. Once again, Macron is not a perfect foreign policy person, but I think he might know a little bit because he's been around for a minute. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to agree with Matthew on that one, because I'll be entirely honest. Like, as far as the foreign policy assessment of advisors to the president, they're all yes men. Like, they're not really there to give any advice. And also, on top of that, the president's made it very clear multiple times he really doesn't even listen to any of his advisors. Like, his advisors could literally begging him, no, don't do it. And he'll go, shut the hell up. And then he'll go do what he wants anyways. So I think if anyone told him something just flat up with how it was going to be, it probably was Macron, in my opinion. I don't think it could have gone any other way than that. Maybe we'll be proven wrong, though. But if we are, neither of us will know which of us is right until about 20 years from now, probably. Or maybe 10 years from now. But still, thank you so much once again for supporting up with this channel to keep it running, because I would agree with you, but I don't think it was an advisor to the president. I actually think it was just the president of France who did that. Also, by the way, man, I've been wondering, how long has Macron been the president? Let me go see that, because I actually do not know. So he's been in office since 2017. So he's almost been there for a good, let's see, 8 years. So he's been there for a good bit, actually. Pretty much 2 presidential terms here in the United States.
Yeah, he's been around the block, and he's like any other politician. He's got his problems, but I think on a foreign policy perspective, he might have a better grasp on it. But he makes mistakes too. He's not perfect, but I think he got the point across at least with why Ukraine's important. I think he understands that particular issue better. But I think he imparted that knowledge, thankfully.
Yeah, very, very interesting. He was actually born in Amiens, which is up in northeastern France, up here. That's fairly interesting. Did not know that. There's actually a beautiful cathedral in Amiens. It's right here. And this is a cathedral that's much less spoken about, but actually I believe is bigger than the Notre Dame. But it's a beautiful cathedral, really an impressive one throughout. And actually, Amiens was a major transport hub for the British Expeditionary Force and the French Army in World War I. And one of the last campaigns, the offensive campaigns that the Germans conducted, actually was trying to break through the British lines at Arras and make their way to Amiens to try and cut off the British Expeditionary Force from the French, and pretty much do what Hitler did successfully in 1940 in World War II, but all the way back in 1917. Well, actually, I think it was 1918 by that point. But a fairly interesting little deal right there. But let's see here. I'll be honest with you, man. His affiliations have been all over the place. Like, you know, over the years, he's really changed directions a good bit. But let's see here.
Yeah, the weird thing is he had the same affiliation. Like, he actually had two different affiliations at the exact same time, which is unusual as hell. I'll be honest with you, I don't fully understand France's political system, and we wouldn't get into that anyway, but it appears he had two different political parties simultaneously, which is very weird.
Which ones are those? Is it the first one here, the second one, or the third one?
It's the second and third ones.
Actually, it appears that his affiliation with the second one ceased in 2009, and with the other one began in 2009 simultaneously. So,
Are you sure? I was reading it. Okay, I think I might have misseen that. Can you zoom in or something? I can barely see the numbers.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, I can. I didn't know that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I was mistaken then, big time. That number is much different. I thought it said 2006 through 2016 through 2009 through 2016. I was about to say, how are you holding two different political parties simultaneously? It's like, I've never seen that before in my life.
Yeah, that's. I was thinking. I was like, I don't think that's the case. But interestingly enough, as far as his political career started, he started off on one side, and through the years he's actually made it to the other side, because the one that he's actually in right now is considered to be on the other side of the political sphere in France. But French politics, to be entirely honest with y'all, not getting into the exact details, works entirely different than American politics, with like the voter base, the kind of things that impact France politically, that kind of a deal. Very different kind of a landscape than the United States. But it's a very interesting one. And also on top of that, in France, the president really matters more so than the president of the United States, because unlike the president of the United States, which is bound by checks and balances, in France, the Constitution is written to where if his party has the ruling majority in the National Assembly, and he was able to get a significant enough of the vote in France, the National Assembly isn't even convened. He just runs the country by default, and whatever he does goes. There's no regulatory bodies or anything like that. It's pretty much an elected dictatorship if you get the majority, which is a really interesting way that France runs. And it was made that way by design by, I believe, generally Charles de Gaulle in post-war France, if I'm remembering that correctly. But anyways, with that, I hope that does. Also, by the way, another thing that people might not know is that political revolutions in France are actually somewhat common. Even in the modern day, France, as far as their political structure, is a little bit unstable, because at some points the country can just riot and pretty much pull off a French Revolution light at any moment. No executions are had these days. That doesn't happen anymore. But they can pretty much just overthrow the government and bring in a new one, because since the end of the Second World War, there have been multiple other French republics that have risen and fallen, with new governments completely formed from the ashes, I believe at least 3 times at this point, because people just became incredibly unhappy with the way the government was running. They tear the whole thing down and pretty much create a new one. Of course, it was really minor changes that would happen in the end, but still, in effect, the government was quite literally destroyed and then rebuilt. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Scott Milan, who puts in a $25 donation, and thank you very much, Scott, as well, for helping to keep the channel running. And I was just going back to check real quick. Let's make sure there was not a comment attached. And there was not. No comment attached. But thank you very much, Scott, for the 25 Australian, that is. And we appreciate it. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much, Scott, for the support. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support means a great deal. And we thank you so much for that, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so with that, a huge thanks to you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to SC Deer Girl, who puts in a 20. And thank you very much, SC Deer Girl, for the support once again. And they said, Enforcers.
Oh, that's it?
That's it. Enforcers.
Oh, hello! but still, thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel running. We wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. So a massive thanks to you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address that incredibly well, South Carolina dear girl. And thank you once again for enjoying this channel and wanting to help it to keep on running. Also, by the way, I thought I'd share this because I see some people saying some things about Macron, and this is probably one of the more interesting things about Macron, just as like a personal backstory kind of a thing. Is that he has a wife. I don't really know how to pronounce her name. It's Brigitte Marie Claude Macron. But beyond that, she was actually his school teacher when he was in his teens. And so then he got out of school, and then he ended up wooing her and then marrying her. Like, no joke. That's just actually how it went. So that's like, when you think about it, it's like, that's a little interesting. Like, it's like, that's you know, it's like, you wouldn't really think that would be a normal kind of a thing. It's like, you know, that's it. Like, not to of course slander him or say that's good or anything, but it's an interesting kind of a thing right there. You don't see that happening often out there in the world. But man, he sat there and he said, Madame, I like your mathematics or something like that. It's like, I don't know what he said. Like, do you
Bro
like
was
my
messing around
own?
at school, it sounds like.
Man, you know, he was saying, well, would you like to learn some more anatomy? Something like that. It's like, I don't know, but, you know, it's like something interesting was going on there. That's without a doubt. But anyways, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here goes. Someone said creepy. It's like I really don't know what to think about that, to be honest with you. It's kind of I'll just leave it at interesting. But yeah, it's kind of a little bit out there. But anyways, jumping into our next super chat. This one goes to Gunfox, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Gunfox, for the support, and we appreciate that very much. And Gunfox said, September 18th, 1964, the AS-102, also designated as SAVII, Matt, that's 7. Oh, Gunfox, you don't think I know how to read the ancient letters? But no, I don't. But anyways, he said AS-102 was the first time a Saturn rocket carried the ST-124 programmable guidance computer, and previous launches had used an onboard black box. And question from the chat.
And yes, the AS-102 airshift cylinder and dump pump. This is definitely in space history. Matthew, give me the details on that again so I can pull it up.
It's the AS-102. Let's see here. It was the first time a Saturn rocket carried the ST-124 programmable guidance computer.
Yes. The AS-102. This one right here. Hey, haven't we covered this one before? This was purple. Like, this was purple when I clicked on it. But I do thank you so much for the support and sharing that with us. And very interesting to hear that it was carrying some sort of a programmable guidance computer. That's incredibly interesting right there. And it used an onboard black box that was pre-programmed. That's incredibly interesting right there. And this was launched in 1964 on that rocket right there. Pretty neat, actually. Pretty neat. And I got to thank you so much for the support, Gunfox, and sharing with us another day in space history, because space history is interesting. I don't really know much about it. Unfortunately, I really cannot look into it a lot, but it is still a very interesting program nevertheless. And even crazier, the entire mission time was 7 hours and 30 minutes, meaning that the entire thing was done in a single workday from launch to the end of the mission. So, dude, you clock in at 9 in the morning, run the mission and end it and walk off, and that was the end of the mission. It's like, for most people in the control room, it's like, that must have been nice, man. Like no multi-shift things where you're having to get like updates from some other guy. It's a one and done kind of a deal.
Oh, they clocked in, but they did clock out.
They check in, but they don't check out. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Rye Guy SR, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Rye Guy, for that support. And also, we'll return back to get that live chat for Gunfox, by the way. But this one from Rye Guy, that $20 support, and thank you very much for that support. They said, hey, guys, and what do you think happened to change U.S. and Ukraine relations in the last couple of days, or the U.S. stance? And do you think that Putin will actually agree to any kind of end to the war? And God bless the USA and Slava Ukraine and LSA.
Long live the Republic and long live the Lead Spring Army. And to be honest with you, I think it's a factor of two things. The Russians' pig-headedness on accepting nothing less but unconditional victory in Ukraine, and also Macron coming over and probably quietly threatening the President of the United States that there was going to be repercussions for the United States if he continued along that route. I think it was those two things that have massively changed the foreign policy stance at this point, because it's showing that he's screwed if he tries to keep, cozying up to the Russians on both ends. So, he better not. I think that's probably what was shown. But another thing that I'd have to say, is that I forgot the first part of your super chat. And I was, and Matthew, could you reread it really quickly?
They said, what do you think happened to change the U.S.-Ukraine relations? And also, do you think Putin will agree to end the war?
I don't really think Putin will agree to end the war for now. I think we're going to have to bombard them into submission a little bit more, and then he'll probably get around to the negotiating table then. But it's not going to happen now. We really don't get to decide when the war ends. We just kind of get to decide how much closer we are to the end of the war is really the best way to look at it. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and I thank you once again for support and asking a very interesting question. And also, let's get that live chat, Matthew, for Gunfox.
All right, so the live chat question goes to Kendrick Streetman, who says, isn't the USA removing their troops from Okinawa?
Are we removing them from Okinawa? Not. But no, I don't think we are, because Kadena Air Force Base has been under U.S. control for an incredibly long time, and I don't think that's going to be changing anytime soon, because it's a strategically important base within a very important part of the Western Pacific. So I would say I haven't heard any news about it, and I'd highly doubt it, and if that was happening, I'd be fairly shocked. So I hope that addresses that live chat well, at least from what I know. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here is going to go to Skinless, who puts in a $50 donation. Thank you very much, Skinless, for that massive support once again. We appreciate it. And it says it's your 5th ever super chat, so big thanks. And Skinless says, thanks for your hard work, gentlemen. LSA appreciates all the hard work, and take one from the chat.
And thank you so much, Skinless. I don't have skin. That was my imitation of not having skin. But beyond that, thank you so much for enjoying our hard work. We try very hard. We actually have kept our skin doing it, which is a very fortunate thing. I suppose that you have not kept your skin in your occupation. But beyond that, I gotta say, thank you so much once again for enjoying our great work. I hope it's great. Like I said, it was great. I don't know if it's great. That's kind of up to y'all. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel keep running. That's massive support, and we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one from the chat goes to Neo Saturn, who says, does Ukraine's Air Force 1 get fighter escorts?
I'm not really sure. I don't really. I would think so, most likely, that they would be given protections by the countries they're flying over. And I have a feeling the United States, they probably were given an air escort. Probably is just a standard most of the time that would happen. So with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one. But a big thanks to you so much once again, Skinless, for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one is going to go to Neil Vizanot, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Neil, as well. He said, hi, LSA, and I had a conversation with my family earlier today. And I know it's unusual, but I was wondering if I could get a poll. Do you think the Ukrainian war shows that Western military doctrine is too dependent on air power?
That is an interesting question. Matthew, do you think you could word that up in a short enough way that it actually would fit? And then also give some options on that, because I think that would be an interesting question.
Consider it done.
It is going to be done. But I do thank you so much for the support in the meantime. And to give you an answer on that, I would say not really. Because our industrial base allows us to be able to do something like that. And also replenish losses, at least in a hypothetical world. I'm not really sure if that would actually practically happen. But I think that the reliance on air power is really what's made the West that powerful on the battlefield, is that we usually destroy our enemies from the skies instead of having to get into a direct shooting battle on the ground, which usually ends up incurring a great deal of casualties. So I think I'd actually be in the camp of saying that air power is something that actually is something that the West should be heavily reliant on, because it's a big reason why we've been able to win so many conflicts handily, is because we're able to leverage a greater deal of explosive power thanks to those aircraft onto enemy forces. So I hope that addresses that well, at least in my opinion. I don't know which side of the argument I'm falling on right there, but it's still a very interesting kind of a question. And it actually looks like the poll is shaping up to disagree with me, at least at this point. But Matthew, what are you thinking about it?
On the question of this poll right here, I would say, generally speaking, let's see, let me reread it real quick because I was reading someone else's question in the live chat. Do you think the Ukrainian war shows that Western military doctrine is too dependent on air power? I would say honestly not. Because Ukraine has shown throughout the whole war that they don't have air superiority, but yet they're still winning the war. So I would say it's not too dependent. Now, obviously, if we're talking about the United States, we lean heavily on air superiority, and we actually do have the aircraft to back that up. But Ukraine does not. But that's kind of unique, though, because Ukraine really wasn't well equipped with an air force before they started the war. So they're kind of a unique situation. But generally speaking, I'm with the 40% that said no. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, I've already said that I believe that air superiority. Mr. Senator, I've already answered this question. I'm going to walk up to the podium and trip and fall and bust my damn hips for the 9th time this week.
I'm sorry, everyone. He's having a little issue. We're gonna get him off stage.
But anyways,
He's having a little issue. He's not talking at all. Whoa.
Listen, Jack. Listen. You think that's bad? You haven't seen nothing yet. I can top that every day.
no, like
I can top it every day, Jack.
But anyways,
It's better to say nothing at all and remove doubt. Have doubt. Oh,
you know what they say, if you have nothing nice to say, then Corn Pop was a bad dude. Blast him with a shotgun.
If you got anything to say that's not nice, then say it now. Say it immediately.
You know what they say. They always said you go to China, you pop them on the booty. But man, the unhinged stuff, it just works. It works. There will be LOLs in the chat. I hope. I pray. But anyways, with that, I hope that has addressed it well. Thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Fachata, who puts in the $50 donation. And thank you very much, Fachata, for that $50 support. And they said, is Ukraine's success lately jamming glide bombs the reason for them being able to drive the Russians back lately, and will it continue?
Great question, Fachata, and the answer is yes. Generally because modern wars, or really any war at this point, is won by superior firepower. It isn't really about the number of troops on the ground or anything like that. It really is just about the fact about how many bombs can you blow up on the enemy's head and how many pounds of that is it in numbers. That's really what wins a war these days. And the Russians were able to push the Ukrainians back in the Avdiivka battle and also around the area of Toretsk and Bakhmut because they were leveraging a larger amount of explosive firepower onto the Ukrainians. And blowing up bombs over people's heads makes them scared. It always happens. And no one can ever say that they're not scared of that. Everyone's reflex is to hit the ground and make themselves incredibly small and pray that they're not going to get vaporized by the next bomb. And so when you're able to pretty much do that to everyone on the battlefield, you're able to outmaneuver them, isolate them, and destroy them in detail, which is largely why superior firepower through air power is an incredibly important thing in the modern battlefield. And so that's largely why the Russians were able to push the Ukrainians back, is because they were pretty much bombing them enough to keep their heads down. But now that they're able to jam these glide bombs and stop them from hitting Ukrainian positions, the Russians aren't able to bomb the Ukrainians enough for them to keep their heads down and to be able to isolate and destroy Ukrainian forces in detail or attempt to outmaneuver them to where they're forced to retreat. That's pretty much what's going on at this point, and that's why, in a big roundabout sense, you pretty much are correct. The Ukrainians jamming those glide bombs is what's really making the Russians at this point unable to stop the Ukrainians from holding their ground and then also counterattacking successfully, is that the Ukrainians at this point are getting a little bit closer to being in parity in firepower with the Russians, meaning for every pound of explosives that the Russians lob Ukraine's way, the Ukrainians are lobbing nearly a pound right back at them, which is really evening out the playing field and making it easier for Ukraine to kind of flex their muscle in terms of the superior infantry, in terms of training and quality that they have, even at this point in the conflict. So with that, I hope that does answer your question incredibly well, Fachad. And I'd have to say that a question like that is incredibly observant indeed, because that really is the case that we're seeing on most battlefields, especially in Pokrovsk. The example is very evident and clear in that area. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Glock, who's there? LSA, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Glock, for that support. He said, Corgi Fund, and can you give us a pup update in LSA? And I can tell you, I paid the Corgi a visit today. Mr. Corgi made it through the surgery just fine. So he will be fine. And he's doing better, actually, with his condition. So that's a good thing as well. He does have a multi-week recovery period to go through, though. So he's being pinned up for 2 weeks and only let out for food and drink. So he's not having much of a corgi life for the next couple of weeks, but he's doing good. He's doing good. But he did have to have his fur shaved off, which he's not happy about at all. But not all the fur, just some of it. But he's not happy. But anyways, Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say the corgis are doing good. Sheba is being Sheba, and she hasn't been bitten by a snake or anything lately, so we're very happy about that. And Monsu will work. It just got out of a surgery, and he's now recovering. So little Monsu, he doesn't have most of his fur. Haven't got to see him yet since he got out of the surgery. I only got to see him before he left, and he wasn't feeling that great then, but now he's apparently feeling better. So hopefully he's on the up and up, and hopefully I'll be able to see him sometime soon, because I've been busy today putting out that music video on Patreon, and also doing a couple of other things as well. But beyond that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again, Glock, who's there, for asking for a Corgi update, because the Corgis are doing well, and hopefully will be doing better. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to James Hughes, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you, James, as well, for the support. He said, our president answered over 1,000 questions in his first month and had about 500 contradictions. He has the entire country confused. And I would think Putin and Zelensky might be confused also. What are y'all's thoughts and thanks? I'll say this, James. It's certainly not easy to follow, but I will be as neutral as possible on this and say that as long as we get to the end result of not abandoning our allies and we keep Ukraine as an ally, we keep funding them and ensuring they're not taken over by the dictator, and also we keep basically keep an alliance with our NATO partners as well, and we keep an alliance with Taiwan, as long as we don't abandon our friends, then I guess it's all good in the end. Obviously, it was very tough to get there. It could have been a lot easier, but ultimately, as long as the goals are met, then I'm okay. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would largely have to agree with Matthew on that. There's been a decent amount of contradictions, but as long as the right thing is being done in the end, and we see that Western interests prevail around the world, that's really all I'm concerned about at the end of it. So I would agree, very confusing times, without a doubt. I can't really, gloss that over. But as long as the right thing is done in the end, I suppose it'll be fine. And so with that, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Tenzin Norbu, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Tenzin, for that $20 support. They said a historic bridge in Prague is named after a Holy Roman Emperor. And do you know his name?
Charles IV, King of Bohemia and the Holy Roman Empire. That's got to be the guy. Isn't it? Like, let me see if I can find it. Let's see here. Where in the world is the bridge? Because I'm not finding it. I'm not finding the bridge. Like, they don't really label their bridges. Like, what's going on? They don't burn their bridges. They don't label them either. I'm kind of... Oh, look, they're building a new railroad bridge here. What train station does this go to? Oh, Prague Central. Prague Central Station. Let's take a gander. Oh, they got the Stadler flirts. That's cool. I like those. I don't like that one.
I don't like that.
That's cartoonish looking. Let's see. They got that Skoda. I'm not gonna lie. Like, check. Oh, look at that.
Check it out.
Check.
Check, mate.
Bro, check mix. But let's see here. Oh, wait, what's that? A historical rail car. Pretty cool. But beyond that, let's take a gander outside of that again. Is it the Charles Bridge? Let me go pull that up. The Charles Bridge. It is the Charles Bridge. It's the one with the cool little tower at the end of it. Look at it. It's the Charles Bridge, named after Charles IV. And so Yeah, that's the bridge. And the only reason I guess that is because of Kingdom Come Deliverance, when they said Charles IV, King of Bohemia and Holy Roman Emperor, died, and then his son Wenceslas became the King of Bohemia, and then a whole bunch of stuff happened, and then Sigismund came and all that. So that's the only reason I would know, because I think that is the only guy from Bohemia that became the Holy Roman Emperor outside of Wenceslas, who then lost the title of Holy Roman Empire to Sigismund of Luxembourg. So I hope that addresses that well, and I thank you so much once again for support, and I hope I got that correct from Kingdom Come Deliverance lore, or really history lore that I learned from Kingdom Come Deliverance. But anyways, thank you so much once again. I hope that addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one is going to go to Octavian Timarasanu, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Octavian, as well, for that support once again, and we appreciate it very much. He said, ever date a girl who says she loves you one day and then ghosts you the next, only to come back weeks later like nothing happened? That's the current U.S. foreign policy and what it feels like, playing with your heart and giving you anxiety. I'll tell you why, I ain't playing games like that.
I tell you, girls like that are bad
No.
business. Just get away from them. You're saving yourself some time and some energy right there. Anyone who does anyone like that, whether you're a girl talking to a guy or a guy talking to a girl, if anyone does you like that, they're not really interested in you. They're just playing you. Leave them alone and move on. That's probably the best advice I can give to that. But that I guess that's kind of what's going on right now with U.S. foreign policy. I would largely agree with you on that, Octavian, because you just never know, and it actually does cause us a good amount of anxiety and stress behind the scenes because, like any concerned citizen of the United States or anyone who's a concerned citizen of any country in the West, we're always concerned about the future of what our world will look like that we're going to be living in. So with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. You know something, man, that I just realized, isn't the Czech Republic, let's see, EU map. Yeah, the Czech Republic is in the EU, and you know something I just realized, Matthew, is that they don't use euros, do they? They use Czech krona.
They use the krona?
Yeah, they see,
Karuna.
the Corona, like a beer, like it's a bunch of it, or like something else. I've had a delicious soup today, but let's see here, man.
This currency is wilding out.
Dude, honestly, man, some of these people look like they needed to eat a little bit more.
Some of these people right here look like that, like sketchy sheriff's department somewhere in Alabama that had like those people arrested for like corruption or something.
No,
like
no.
shots from that.
Dude, that's terrible. It's true, but it's terrible. These were some of their former banknotes. Oh, these are the commie ones under Czechoslovakia. Okay. But still, I like the back face on that one. That was a pretty. Oh dang, dude, that little reference to the commies. Oh dang, dude, that little reference to a castle. Holy moly! And then this guy, he's just a bookworm, and another castle. But let's see here. So what do the modern ones look like? He looks tired, like he needs a nap.
That guy said, "I have bags under my eyes. Can you get my bags, sir?"
So let's see. So this is supposed to be Primzel Ottokar the First on this one. So that's that guy. And then there's the reverse face of that. And then this person is Saint Agnes of Bohemia. And then that's the reverse on that one. And then this is Charles IV. King of Bohemia, Holy Roman Emperor. He looks a little tired as well. And that's the return face. Don't know who that guy is, but he's very tired and hungry. That's the return face. Honestly, the currency is interesting. Not the most aesthetically pleasing. I actually think the euro might beat it out. But that's interesting to know that they're a part of the European Union and they're not a part of the common currency exchange. Because they're legally bound, apparently, to adopt the euro in the future, but they still haven't adopted it yet. So that's very interesting. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marius North 78 once again, who puts in the 15. And they said that someone that I mentioned is Macron.
Hey, and I thank you so much for the support and clarifying that. And I thank you greatly for that once again. And so with that, thank you greatly. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Eric Horner, LSA, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Eric, once more for the support. He said for the coffee fund, and take one from the chat.
Hey, thank you so much for the coffee fund and supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. And we will make sure to take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
This one goes to Canada is Sovereign, who said that Ukraine is looking for security guarantees. And do you think the U.S. will put something up to satisfy Zelensky?
Yes, the president of the United States has made that clear today that they're now looking at security guarantees of some form, but they're saying that Ukraine will not be in NATO at this point. So, kind of there, but not really reaching the mark just yet. So I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Flowers, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Flowers, as well. They said, I hope you're doing well and have a good night.
And I am doing well, Flowers, and I hope that you're having a great night as well. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in 2 $10 super chats, and we appreciate it very much. They said, I really dislike Tucker Carlson. And also, they said some joke here I can't even repeat in classic Jenna style. But Enforcer, what say you?
I don't really like him either. The laugh he has is annoying. Something like that. Like, it's not a good laugh. How does he laugh? Yeah, there we go. There we go. That's the laugh. And also, that was like deep fried, by the way, so it was perfect. But but that's the laugh, and it's an annoying laugh. And also, his understanding of the world is either deliberately skewed, or that's actually what he thinks, and then that's just a stupid analysis of world affairs. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian Gonzalez, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Brian, as well. He said, what if Macron gave him the talk? Laid down the numbers between Europe and the U.S. and explained how he can make life difficult and made it clear that there's not much in Russia that the U.S. wants, and showed him, I'm not repeating that last part right there, but Enforcer, what'd you say?
It's possible. I mean, except for the last part. I don't know what the last part is, but except for the last part, most of that's probably true. The talking was given to the President of the United States, probably laying out the actual environment, the landscape that America is finding itself in these days. So with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Hatchet with 4 zeros, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Hatchet. They said Zelensky is a comedian, and he's probably ready for the game.
Man, Zelensky's like, I have talked to clowns my entire life, and I'll keep talking to you.
I have played the clown, I have played the king, I have played the president. I've played all roles, and I know that you do not control me.
I played a piano with my weenus, and if I can do that, I can do anything, okay? Like, nothing is beyond me. I am from the streets of Kryvyi Rih. Like, there's nothing that could be worse than being from Kryvyi Rih. Have you all seen this place? It's got a freaking iron mine in the middle of the city. Like, how medieval is this shit? Look at that. Like, look at this. There's the Pivdeni Quarry. I grew up around here. This is where I'm from. It is
when people used to act up in the streets of Kryvyi Rih, we would take them to the quarry and throw them in the ravine.
In America, in a bad neighborhood, you hear gunfire. In my bad neighborhoods, in Kryvyi Rih, you would hear swords clashing at night. It was a very dodgy place, and I grew up here. And I did play a piano with my weenus, and I did good at it. So you can shut the hell up about that as a criticism, because, damn it, can you play a piano with your wiener? Like, I bet you can. Like, anyways. Man, anyways. Also, by the way, you can tell that Kryvyi Rih's got his priorities straight, because KFC is in the geographic center of Kryvyi Rih.
We used to go down to KFC and get the big bucket. That's before I became a comedian. The joke was on KFC. I took the chicken and ate it.
But instead of KFC standing for Kentucky Fried Chicken, we actually called it KFB, which stands for Kryvyi Rih Fried Bitches. We would go down there and we would get into fights with other people from other districts of the town, and we would settle it the old-fashioned way. Anyways, I'll be honest with you. Zelensky's probably going to be getting down to business tomorrow, and hopefully so. But still, I hope that doesn't address it well. I hope we had a good little laugh about that here for a little bit. And
We used to go down to KFC and order a large, extra large side of the mashed potatoes and use it as glue to keep the lotta together.
no, man, we would go down to KFC and we would order up a meal, all beef, hold the chicken. Like that's
We knew we had access to the secret menu. We accessed a real chance at real beef.
He said, when I sat there and I grew up in Privy, I said, I'm going to become an actor. And I went down to the KFC and I said, give me the mashed potatoes, hold the potatoes, nothing but gravy. And it worked.
He said, once I discovered gravy, I knew I had to find a way to get it more gravy. And I found it. I have it.
I had to get real gravy. Long lasting.
Lasting gravy.
I sat over there and I watched.
Damn.
I sat over there and I watched Putin sing Raspberry Hill or whatever the hell it was called, and I said, I can do better. Like, I promise you this, I can do better. Became the president, and Putin couldn't even imagine that a greater person could be out here that isn't the joke, but makes the jokes, so he invaded the country because of me, and so now we're fighting this whole freaking war because I tried to join NATO, and then the US got cold feet, and then Russia invaded us in response. It's kind of stupid, but it's the world we're living in, and so now I'm telling them, give me that Cherkasy, because we're going to be shaking them down and giving them that Sumi. Like, but anyways, enough of that. We have enough Zelensky jokes for a month. Like, honestly, dude, like, I was about to start choking from laughing over here. So the man, we said, like, give me the mashed potatoes, hold the mashed potatoes, all gravy. Like, that was honestly a pretty good one. But anyways,
They said, do you want, what type of wings do you want in your big bucket? And I said, I want it extra crispy, fried up crispy.
I mean,
Give me.
he said, when I heard of KFC, I said, wow, this is incredible. It must be amazing. And then they said that you can get chicken with all the bread. And I said, I want that bread. So I went down there and I said, give me the wings, hold the chicken, nothing but bread. Gotta get the bread.
He said, if you're going to save the breading on the chicken, you can give me the bread because I'm the breadwinner.
I said, let me go down to the bakery. I gotta get some dough.
I said, when I need to make a withdrawal from the bank, I go down to the bakery. I say, give me all of your dough. I don't go to the deposit house or the bank. I go down to the bakery and get a baker's dozen, 500,000.
When I party hard. After I play the piano with my wiener, I go down to the bar and I say, get me real pissed, long-lasting piss. Man.
Boy.
But Zelensky is a real one. Like, honestly, I respect him. He is a real one. And beyond all the jokes, he's probably, hopefully we'll see that a good mineral deal is signed tomorrow by both of them. And it'll be setting Ukraine forward on the path to actually see Ukraine to victory. But I hope y'all like the jokes because I feel like they were, most of them were pretty good. Some of them fell flat though, I could tell. But
then they started fizzling out as we got deeper with it.
yeah,
honestly.
because we were trying to ride the high and we were getting too ambitious. Icarus flew too close to the sun. But anyways, it's time for us to move on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Robert McCann, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Robert, for that support. I hope that the U.S. is able to unify our allies and support Ukraine, even using this hardline strategy. LSA, hit the like.
And I'd have to agree, and I thank you so much for the support, and hopefully we'll be able to see that the United States continues to be the leader of a combined Western sphere and continues to support Western and American interests around the globe. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I'm not going to lie. To sound like Zelensky, you have to like sacrifice your vocal cords for the rest of eternity to sound like Zelensky just for a minute. It's like literally, I can feel like the pain already on my vocal cords. It's got to stop.
I found out how to do it without hurting my vocal cords, but I really cannot explain how I do it because I remember I used to do it like you, where you kind of like torture your vocal cords, and eventually it builds up to where it actually hurts. But I found the way to do it where it doesn't hurt. But sadly, I can't guide you to the gravy because I forgot how I did it. I hate to tell you that because I got to where I could do it like all night, but for some reason I can't really remember how I made it to where it doesn't destroy my vocal cords anymore.
Yeah, my vocal cords are pained, so I'm going to stop. But anyways, I'm jumping into our next super chat here, and this one goes to Adam McLean, who puts in a $10 donation, and thank you very much, Adam, for that support. They said, even though my February CIA budget is down to the dollar, I still choose to support the channel as an executive decision.
Hey, and of course, if you're ever in a financial pinch and you like supporting the channel, you don't have to. It's perfectly fine. But I do thank you so much for the support and really enjoying this channel and wanting to keep it running. But make sure to take care of yourself before the channel. Remember, self first, channel second. Always and forever. Like, I will never diss on anyone if y'all have to make that kind of a decision. I completely understand it, and y'all have to take care of yourselves out there. It's a pretty tough world out there at this point economically. So with that, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kevin, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Kevin, for that support. He said, hello from California, wishing you both well. And one question, if the war should end and peace is achieved, would either of you visit Ukraine in the future? And if so, where would you want to go?
Oh, we had a question like this last night. I thank you for the support all the way from Cali. And to answer your question, yes, I would want to go to Ukraine after the war. And if I go to Ukraine, one place I would like to see, there's this island in the Dnipro that is some sort of a historic museum of Cossack culture. Forgot where it is. I think it might be down in Zaporizhia somewhere. Is it here? I think this is it. Yeah, this is it right here. This is like a museum of Cossack culture that exists in Ukraine. Really interesting place, and it actually shows what 16th and 17th century was like. Well, 17th century culture and history was like inside of Ukraine. So I would like to go here and see this personally, because it's just neat. And look at those pants and the absolute authority that this man has. He shows up looking like Steven Seagal in the 17th century. You got to commend that. I don't know how you eat that much. But they also have guns.
They have guns.
And also that...
And they have an animal on the wall, man. Look at it. Man, this thing right here, it's got the side eye growl going on here. It said, hey. It says, I don't even know what the hell it's doing.
Dude, Zelensky goes to this museum. That was the guy I once knew in Kryvyi Rih, beat his ass. He froze in time looking just like that. I put him in this museum as a reminder to everyone to not mess up. Like, don't be like, dude, that's what happened the last time
Zelensky is such a baller that he caught the big bad wolf that blew down the Biggie's house and he put him on the wall.
No, man, actually, that's what happened the last time someone stood up to Stefan Chuk. He went, Stefan Chuk no like, Stefan Chuk smash! And then he like that wolf ended up like that, and they put it in the museum. Like, honestly, that's probably what happened, honestly. Dude, that's the whole wolf's body. But he was trying to jump away from him, and he just brought his fist down on it and crushed it into an accordion, and then they just tacked it to the wall just like it was when Stefan Chuk got a hold of it. Oh my god. Stefan Chuk though, he's got like the hands like big enough to literally just crush someone in this grip. Like he's the kind of build where you come in and they say, Sire, they took the king's and then he like grabs your neck and squeezes it so hard your eyeballs pop out like a cartoon. Like he's got like the build for that. But anyways, with that, I thank you so much for giving us support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Con LSA once again, and thank you very much, Con, for that $10 support. He said, I am sitting here listening to you guys while playing Resident Evil 4 on PlayStation. It's an older classic. It does not get better than this. And thanks, guys, and LSA.
Hey, thank you so much for the support, Con. And I've never actually played the Resident Evil series, but maybe one day I will. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Mr. Bulberin, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Mr. Bulberin, for that support. And I do not see a comment attached, actually, but thank you very much for that once again. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the support. No comment attached, but we are incredibly appreciative of it. And so with that, thank you so much once again. And we are on to the next one.
And we've got one from JP on the road, who puts in a 10. And JP says, Winston Churchill said, you can always count on Americans to do the right thing after they've tried everything else.
Yeah, that sounds right. Like that kind of adds up. Sort of, kind of, yeah. I guess, I suppose. But nevertheless, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this possible. And we wouldn't be able to have the Postal Museum up here in the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. And they also have the little railway that the post office used to move mail around in the underground. Kind of cool. And look at that. I mean, it's a cool place. They talk about the mail. But anyways, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than Psyops, who makes a return once again and puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Psyops, for that support. And he said something here about pheasants, but I'm not really sure if I'm going to be able to read this one off, because it sounds like it could get foul. So I might have to pass. But thank you, Psyops, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
You see the pun Matthew pulled? He said foul like a bird. Like a pheasant.
I didn't even realize it.
You were supposed to own up to it. But beyond that, thank you so much for the support, Psyops. But I'm gonna have to err on the side of judgment with Matthew. If he thinks that it might not be readable, it might not be. But I still thank you so much for the support, and it's great to know that you're still around, Psyops, and watching and enjoying. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to GTI 78007, who puts into 5 and says, Slava Ukraine. And I say, Hiram Slava. And thank you very much for that support, and we appreciate it. We also have a 5 from Burnaby Alex, who said, the bidding for minerals is like an episode of Shark Tank where people ask, what is in it for me?
Honestly, Shark Tank used to be vicious, and now it's just overly soft. Like, you don't even have to have a good business anymore on Shark Tank. You can just come in and be like, my dog died. And they'll be like, okay, here you go, $500,000. We don't even take a percentage of your company. It's like, oh, this isn't even a Shark Tank anymore. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. And so, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Uwe Golden, who puts into 5. And they said the grab of Ukraine's minerals is driven largely by China having a stranglehold on most sources of rare earths and related minerals.
Interesting. Very interesting. That might actually be the case. And I thank you for sharing that. I'll have to look into that and research that a little bit more on the resource side of things. But thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kachulian343, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Kachulian. They said, I think the fact that Zelensky dresses and acts like a regular dude a lot of the time is part of the reason why people like him, and it makes him relatable and human. And honestly, Kachulian, I would say that it probably doesn't hurt, to be honest. Like, I was of the position originally that he should wear a suit in Congress, and honestly, I would still stand by that. But at the same time, though, when it comes to changing public opinion, if people want to hate Zelensky, wearing a suit's not going to change that. People are going to find another reason to hate him. So, you know, I will say this. I always believe in having decorum, especially when in the highest office in the land. Like, for example, if you're in the White House or you're in Congress and you're on the floor, then in my opinion, you should be in like formal attire. That is just general respect. If one of our officials went to the Ukrainian Rada or went to the Ukrainian president's office, I would say they ought to be in a suit as well if they went there. But that's just me. I don't think a lot of people agree with me on that, but that's just my personal perspective. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd personally have to tell you all that I wear green because every day I wake up and I go, okay, time to go get that green. Like, we gotta go get more support for Ukraine, more money. It's good. Like, people are always complaining. They always say every time Zelensky opens his mouth, he's asking for more money. It's like, well, shit, they're at war. I mean, what are they supposed to be asking for? Thoughts and prayers? I mean, do thoughts and prayers protect the Ukrainian soldier from an artillery round? Probably not, I would have to assume. But nevertheless, one thing I do have to say is that, as far as I am concerned, Zelensky has his own drip factor. Look at that. That's like a Manchurian collar, and he's wearing it like Mao Zedong. Real. Like he's got aura. Very good. Like, not bad. That's actually pre-war, actually. But nevertheless, we can also see other pictures of Swolensky. This was when he was hitting the weights. You could see the swollen biceps, if that's what that's called. I don't know. I don't really work out, but Hey, would you look at that? Not that bad. But beyond that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And also, I don't know why people complain about I'm always asking for money, because to be entirely honest, like, if you ever think about it, the founding fathers, like Benjamin Franklin, were in Paris asking for nothing but money, and we never saw the French people levy these kinds of complaints against him, saying that he was a part of some sort of a larger world order or something, a little stupid in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Brian James, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Brian, as well, for the support. He said, disclose the news source / outlet you read that informed your opinion on the negotiating process.
There really isn't one. It's just from the understanding of how negotiations have worked historically. So there isn't like a specific source. It's just really like knowledge that's been acquired. That's kind of how all of our analysis works on the channel. Is just knowledge acquired over years. So there really isn't a pinpoint source for it. Because if I'm having to read, like, I'll be honest with you, I'm having to read at this very moment how the negotiation process is supposed to work. I'm probably heavily underqualified to be able to tell y'all how a negotiation process works if I'm having to read Negotiating 101. So I hope that does address that somewhat well. Thank you once again for support. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Shannon Newman, who puts in a 5 and says, misinformation and disinformation with propaganda is the way of the CCP.
It really is. Those Chinese communists, they're very tricky. Tricky? That's something that Tricky Dick would know. But nevertheless, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Psyops yet again, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Psyops, for that support once again. I'm not sure what this one's about either. This one's also very interesting. So thank you very much, Psyops, for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you for the support, Psyops, and helping this channel to keep on running, because it's folks like you that make this thing possible. And we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Kachulian343, who puts in a 5 and says, Taiwan is too important strategically, and losing the semiconductor production alone would be a disaster, and they're important for geographically too.
I would agree with all those things for the large part. And so with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Thomas McKnight, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Thomas, for that support as well. And they said LSA and take one from the chat.
Hey, and LSA, and we will take one from the chat. So what do we got, Matthew?
And this one goes to Char G, who says, the idea about the tail repaint of Ukraine president's plane is genius. Can we make it happen?
I would wish. Honestly, I would like to see a complete redesign of the Ukrainian Air Force One. I would have a digital graphics designer redesign it and then show the plan or the kind of idea that I would have. But and it's just the plane. Let's just talk about it real quick. We're running out of time here, but we can talk about it for just a second. In my honest opinion, I make it a little bit more bold. I would have the entire thing repainted above the kind of like we'll call it the waterline for the paint job, the waterline of the fuselage. I'd have the entire thing painted a darker blue, have the Ukrainian trident on the back, and have Ukraine up here in gold, and then just remove the Ukrainian trident from right there and just have it on the vertical stabilizer. I honestly think that would be visually far more striking than the current Ukrainian Air Force One government aircraft livery design that they have right now. I think it would look way better than this one. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Psyops once more. He puts in another 5, and thank you, Psyops, as well. He said, looking for a wife, no giant robots in the house, no plans of global domination, and no bully me.
And I wish you the best of luck on that endeavor, Psyops. And I thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from the B-Man. And the B-Man puts in 2 $5 donations. And thank you very much, B-Man, for the support. They said to be courageous means you feel scared. And they're eating dogs, cats, donkeys.
They're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, and some, I've heard, are eating donkeys, eating ass, I suppose, but they will not go there because I just realized that is a totally different thing. And now I said it, so I can't take it back. Let me on. I hope that does address that well. I legitimately slipped up, Matthew, because I was trying to think of like something to say about eating donkeys, and like I was like, they're called asses, so I'll say that, and then I was like, that was a mistake, a terrible one. But anyways, with that, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Darren Quinn, who puts in a 5 and says, China, Ukraine will get back Crimea. Me arties.
But Hopefully that is the case in some instances and not in the others. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kachulian343, who puts in a 5 and says, I think equipment losses are down because donkeys don't count. And also, what about the marmot's thoughts and the enslavement of the animal brethren by Russia?
That's an interesting question. I wonder will you have time for a small marmot segment. I mean, like a very small one, because we're starting to go.
Bring him out. Bring him hither.
Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello there, good sir. Could I interest you in a piece of rock? Could I interest you in a piece of fare? Or a plum, perhaps? Would you like one of these nice, juicy plums, which are very conveniently placed on the side rock, because I'm selling main rock here below the claw. Also, I just noticed something. The fly, he's down there. He's trying to be entrepreneurial. He's trying to get into the professional camera game. What do you say, fly?
Aw, man, I need a camera and a ephemera to travel around the Bandera. Aw, man.
That sounds like something a crackhead would say.
I need to strip copper wire out of air conditioning units. Aw, man.
You'll strip nothing, Governor. You'll strip nothing.
I'll strip.
Well, he might do that.
Yeah, he probably would. He's going to go on another romp through the woods. Man, where'd those refugees go? Like, let me on that. I have to say, thank you so much for the support. I hope you enjoyed our Marmot and the Fly segment. We always get a kick out of it. And I'd have to say that the Marmot's probably very sad about the donkeys, I would have to say. But with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And like Butchie777 said, you'll do what you're told. But anyways, we're moving on to our next one here, which goes to Jeremy Vigil, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, Jeremy, for the support. He said, I just want to let you know I'm enjoying my coffee made from snow.
And I thank you for enjoying your coffee made of snow, and I hope that you've been enjoying it greatly as we've been running this show.
But still, thank you once again. I hope that is addressed that well. And we are on to the next one.
And we have 3 last super chats. This one goes to Mark Andrew Burnett, who puts in a 2, along with Pireway Productions Entertainment, who puts in a 2 as well, and also Plazat, who puts in the consistent $2 donation as well. And thank you very much to all 3 of you for that support and helping to keep the channel running. And now it is time, once again, thank you all to all of our super chatters for helping to keep the channel nice and running and coffee brewing. It's now time to get to our live chat questions proper. And up first, we have our Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight, Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Benu, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, David Millsap, Roy Fluffiness, Arable Garbo, Johnny Dog, and Norm Pritchett. They said the Morse code says, are now turning against the Russians? What the hell's going on here? LSA.
And that's the sound of money. Y'all got that correct on the 1,100th day of the war. A big congratulations to y'all. A massive congratulations to y'all. Y'all got that correct. That's very impressive right there. And I got to say, y'all are on the ball. And so I hope that does address it incredibly well. We are on to the third to last. Whoa. That was a voice crack. Whoa. But we are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Eric Horner, LSA, who says, do you think the president made those bad statements about Zelensky just to see what Putin would do to actually negotiate a peace?
Maybe. It's really hard to tell. We'll have to see. Because also, yeah, you know, who knows? Maybe that was the case. I would hope so. Because then at least it would have some sort of a concept of a plan. But I wouldn't really know for sure. But with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Chris Harden, who says, didn't Russia back out on the Lend-Lease Act from World War II that they had with the United States?
Yes, they did. They actually refused to repay us for anything or send us back anything. So they kept all of the support that we gave them pretty much free. And that's why we started to heavily sanction them and stuff after the end of the war, like pretty much dead on, like dead ass. But with that, that does address that somewhat well. And it appears that we have another super chat here.
And this one goes to Jeremy The Hill, who said, it's The Hill. And thank you, Jeremy, for that. He said, take one from the chat. And guess what, Jeremy? You're going to take us into our final question of the night. And once again, huge thanks for the support. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I got to thank you so much for the support, Jeremy The Hill, and helping this channel to keep on running. And you're actually going to be helping us to get that final question of the night with your sponsoring of the final live chat. And so, who is the last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is John Bernard, who said, have you guys discussed the Cubans in Ukraine? There are several dozen, hundreds Cubans being deployed in Ukraine.
We haven't really talked about them a lot because the Cuban voluntold are an incredibly small number. But yes, the Cuban government actually did send Cubans to Russia, saying that they were going for foreign work programs, and then they got forced into the military instead, and they're fighting in Ukraine. We just don't hear enough about them, though, on the Russian side to really get enough information to talk about them. So beyond their existence, there's not much known about them publicly, rather than that. So unfortunately, we can't talk about them a lot, rather than the fact that they exist and they're there, and they're probably having about as bad of a run of it as the North Koreans were. But that's not the first time. That's not the first time that Cubans have been in Russia. As a matter of fact, Russians were in Cuba, and they put nuclear weapons there a while ago, back in like the 60s and stuff. It was a big deal. But anyways, with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream,
And I've got to thank you all so much once again for watching tonight. At the peak, there was about 9.3 thousand people here, and over the course of the stream, there was 57,000 people who watched our stream. I have to thank all of you so much once again for enjoying this channel and watching it through. If you did enjoy, hit the subscribe button. If you didn't enjoy it, unsubscribe. Like, I don't know. I mean, why not? But beyond that, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Leaf Spring Army. The Leaf Spring Army will never die.
And with that, folks, the Leaf Spring Army shall never die. And we are now going to get off the stream and go find something to eat. But anyways, thank you all for joining us tonight. And we do appreciate all the people that were here, and also 3,300 people that smacked the like, and all 57,000 people that joined us by the end of the stream. We appreciate that. And also, we will see you all tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern on the next Nightly War News stream. And if there is enough news to cover, you'll hear from me midday tomorrow for the short war video. And once again, it looks like a lot of people were jumping on that China video out of the blue that I put out the other day, and it looks like that one's going crazy. So maybe there will be one tomorrow as well. But anyways, thank you all for watching, and Slava Ukraine. Hear Slava. Get some rest, and good night.
Call the viewers who are watching that video Chinese because they're picking at the video. But anyways, good night.